right, members of the board, every 4 years the county has to review and update its emergency operations plan, and Lieutenant Wilson and I are here tonight to just give you a quick overview of the plan and then bring you up to date what changes were made. And Lieutenant Wilson is going to answer any questions you might have pertaining to the changes, and both of us will offer any explanations you might have regarding the plan. Just real quickly, this is an all hazards plan, and what we mean by that, it's designed to basically manage any type of natural or man-made disaster. It's not specific for, let's say, a hurricane or a flood. It's generic, but it's also comprehensive enough to manage any type of those events. It's also an all disciplines plan, and what we mean by that is this plan can be followed by law enforcement, fire, EMS, public works, utilities, etc. There's other plans that complement this emergency operations plan, and two of the most notable are probably going to be the Lake of the Woods emergency plan that they have for their dam, and then we also have a radiological plan that we follow for incidents involving the North Anna power plant. Included in our emergency operations plans are different roles and responsibilities. Probably the most important is the chairman of the board, Mr. Frame. You are what they call the director of emergency management. I'm the emergency management coordinator. Lieutenant Wilson would be a deputy emergency management coordinator. And with those roles comes different responsibilities. An example is if we would declare a local emergency, we would make a recommendation to the director of emergency management, which is the chairman of the board. He or she would choose to follow our recommendations or not. If they felt it was necessary to declare a local emergency, what ends up happening is the next time the board meets, you ratify it through resolution. Also included in the plan, let's say Mr. Frame was out of town, the order of succession. The vice chairperson of the Board of Supervisors would be next. County administrator, if the vice chair or the chairman was gone, or if all three of y'all were gone, I could actually declare a local emergency as in my position as the emergency management coordinator. Some of the advantages of declaring a local emergency, probably the most important, that's when we actually start following this plan. We implement the plan and we start to follow it. It allows us to manage resources and obtain resources. When you declare that local emergency and this plan is implemented, it gives me certain powers as my role as the emergency management coordinator. And I go back several years ago, there was a rash of wildfires that hit the area. Madison County was getting hit very hard. Louisa County was getting hit very hard. Orange County, we were fairly lucky, but what happened was we depleted essentially all of our resources in Orange County, heading outside to assist our surrounding localities. What that did is allowed me to stop and hold back a certain amount of resources so that we could protect the citizens of Orange. So that's just an example of some of the powers that would come into play. The other thing is for the speeding up the purchasing process. When you declare a local emergency, it's not that we aren't fiscally responsible, but we're no longer required to obtain, let's say, 3 quotes to buy a certain piece of equipment or to obtain a certain resource. It expedites that process so we can get what we need to mitigate an incident. Another important reason for declaring that local emergency is cost recovery. The federal government declared, let's say, Virginia or Orange County a federal disaster area, and we hadn't declared a local emergency, our ability to seek reimbursement would be greatly diminished. Another part of the emergency operations plan is you look through it, is what we call ESFs. Those are emergency support functions. And those functions are listed in they have a numeric title to them, but essentially, I'm going to just give you a couple examples. One would be law enforcement. And under the law enforcement ESF annex would be like a checklist of different things law enforcement would look at during times of crisis, how they would manage the incident. And each one of those, whether it be fire, EMS, hazardous materials, search and rescue, public works, has an ESF. And what that does is provides a guide or a checklist to somebody that's filling in the EOC to follow those and make sure that we're hitting the different points that we need to follow to make sure that we mitigate the incident. When you were emailed a copy of the plan, you were also emailed a copy of a Word document, and that Word document had all of the changes that we made to the plan. And let me rephrase that. It didn't have every single change because a lot of the changes went from 2008 to 2015, if I'm not
Yeah, just
correct.
updating the law, the date of the law and such.
But what you received are the majority of the changes, except for dates,
And redundancy.
and redundancy, that it actually affected the plan. What I'd like to do now is open up, if y'all have any questions for us. Lieutenant Wilson has done the majority of the work, and I'd just like to acknowledge his work. He's worked the last 4 or 5 months on this, updating the plan. And between both of us, hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions. And then what we would like is for the board to adopt either the updated plan at this work session, if possible, or at your next board meeting. So with that, I'm going to open it up for some questions.
You have here in the changes that the county must be prepared to bear the initial impact of a disaster on its own for a period of 72 hours. Where does the 72 hours come from?
70, if you wouldn't mind letting me hit that one. 72 hours, that comes from FEMA, the federal government. That's what we also tell our citizens is when we start, because
Okay,
part
so
of
it's a FEMA requirement.
well, it's not necessarily a FEMA requirement, but it's when we educate the public, we educate them and we encourage them to be prepared for 72 hours from no help from the locality, no help from the state, no help from the federal government. And what we mean by that is have food, water, alternative source of heat, things of that nature, because part of emergency management is preparedness. And it's incumbent on all of us, including the citizens, because we're a team, to be prepared. And that's what they mean by 72 hours, because if our citizens can hold their own for 72 hours, that's going to allow us to obtain the resources that we need to be able to start to provide assistance and get government back functioning and in order again.
Question, the additions you put on what are called page 26, item 6 deal with the local emergency, declaration of emergency on a local basis. Are there parts of the plan that deal with the situation if it's done by the state or Dominion, you know, in the case of the power plant, or these kind of things? How does that get addressed, and how does it affect our local response? Or does it, I guess is the better question.
If you want, it actually doesn't. There's a lot of times that the state will declare a statewide emergency that we do not declare a local emergency because we aren't going to be impacted, or at least we anticipate not being impacted as much as other parts of the state.
So we don't open up our
not necessarily.
operation center.
We'll open it when necessary, and what we mean by that is if we feel the need, and a lot of times we'll open the EOC and not declare a local emergency. I'll use a lot of these snow events. We'll have a skeleton crew in there, maybe 3 or 4 of us, to take some of the workload off of the 911 center, because what we're able to do is we're able to prioritize calls. We're able to handle some of the calls, whether it be the VDOT, the state police, the utility companies, and take some of that burden off of the 911 center.
So you have some discretionary authority to open the EOC, whether it's a state or a Dominion or
Yes.
snow or whatever else.
And
Okay.
and again, just to be clear, sometimes we open it during an emergency, sometimes we won't open it in an emergency because it's not needed, and then vice versa. There isn't a local emergency declared, and we'll go ahead and open it because part of the ELC's role is coordination and support. And when we open that, and I'm using the example of these snow events, that we haven't declared a local emergency, we can take some of the burden off of the 911 system, or center, I should say.
John, just one thing back on this hierarchy between presidentially declared, that's who declares at the federal level, governor declared and then the locally declared. And I'm speaking more of the reimbursement. It really becomes a timing thing. We're out, we've suspended procurement, we're out buying bread, sandwiches, electrical generators, chainsaws, whatever we need to do with the local. Walk us through our ability to be repaid, reimbursed from the presidentially declared, because these are after the event has happened. There usually is a lag time. And my experience has been that we have to be pretty good on the documentation side for those pre-declaration expenses so that we can get them rolled up in the post-declaration expenses.
And I'm just gonna use the example of a hurricane or a snow event. Those are events that we know are gonna be impacting the county at least a couple days in advance. And again, in the case of a hurricane, we know a hurricane's gonna be impacting Orange County. We can declare that local emergency, and what that does is, again, everything that we've talked about, but probably just as importantly, as Mr. David brought up, is a lot of the pre-event activities that we take, such as checking generators, purchasing additional chainsaws or chains or things of that type nature, become reimbursable because they're preparing for that specific event. Obviously, we declare, the state's more than likely gonna declare, and depending on the amount of damage that impacts the state and Orange County, it might become a presidential declared event. And when that happens, that's when the checkbooks from FEMA open up and allows us to receive a percentage of reimbursement. But as Mr. David talked about, documentation's important, and I'm gonna use my own organization. If Lieutenant Wilson was going around to our different stations checking the fuel and making sure our generators were functioning properly, that would be a reimbursable expense. The mileage of that vehicle, his hourly rate. So we have to differentiate what is something pre-hurricane, what are some of his normal everyday duties. And through that proper documentation, and you need to be catching that on the front end, we're gonna be more successful in receiving funds from FEMA, which is still a very convoluted process. We should never implement the plan just because we think we're going to possibly seek reimbursement. We're implementing the plan because it's needed, because it's a crapshoot, whether it's gonna be a reimbursable event or not, just based on the dollars of damage to the county versus population. There's a complex formula that goes into play there. But
The only other thing, members of the board, I'll add is that typically in these type of events, it's not the equipment cost, it's the labor rates, because you're having a callback situation where people that are off now call back to duty, so you're in a double time and a half kind of overtime, Fair Labor Standards Act, so your labor rates are gonna go up pretty
yeah, but
significantly.
they're gonna at least be time and a half for sure.
What does assist with warning and or cooling mean?
I suspect that's a typo.
Yeah, and what it was in there before is we would set up, say, if we have the derecho like we had a few years ago to come through here and knocked out power for 5 days, we set up some cooling shelters. Same thing would, and that's what it should be, shelters attached to that. Attached to that.
I just thought I missed something, you know.
The way it's written, it says warning and
Assist with
cooling.
warning and or cooling.
Well, I think what they also mean by warning is we do assist with notifying the public, and I'll just use the example of our code red system.
I know that, but I'm just saying this particular item
It
is
may
probably.
be warming.
And it
Well, it's page
warming-
24, item D, whatever that's supposed
It
to be.
probably is warming and cooling shelters. Is
Yeah,
what
it's
I
just
was
with
feeling.
warming and cooling, because in
Yeah.
winter ice events,
Yes.
the electricity goes off and
Heat
you
shelter.
have to.
You know, we were getting a
Same
whole
thing
bunch,
with-
yesterday we were getting a whole bunch of flood watch warnings and stuff like that. All right. Any other questions for John? Okay. We ready to approve this change to the plan?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Just, Mr. Frame, on the resolution that adopts it, what's the page number on that? I believe it's like 17 or something.
We got it done.
You
We
got
got
it
it done.
I think Mr.
Thank you.
Goodwin's, motion included that resolution.
Yeah, 17.
That's what I thought I heard.
Where does this go from there? Doesn't this go to VDM, Virginia Department of
What we'll
Emergency?
do is, now is obviously we'll send VDM, which has actually vetted our plan. That's part of the process, is we meet with our local VDM rep, and there's somebody at VDM who actually just works on emergency operations plans. We'll end up putting this in PDF format, print out certain copies for our EOC, and then distribute the copies to all our partners, law enforcement, fire, EMS, et cetera.
Okay.
And again, I'd just like to acknowledge Lieutenant Wilson for the last 4 or 5 months of hard work. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right.
Tom was liking it back there.
John's got a law license, right?
Yeah. Rose could do this.
Yeah, Attorney Deal.
All right.
We're still waiting for Bob, so I don't know, the suggestion maybe from the board. You all weren't aware, but everybody was there except Mark, but, we had a great ceremony, yesterday up at Aerojet. A lot of public was aware there was something rumbling over at Aerojet, but I think, we did a good job keeping it, all right. What do you guys?
Front page.
Great stuff.
Very good.
But it was a great win for Orange County. A lot of good press. We've been trying to keep a feed on kind of our Google News alerts, and it's a great win for Aerojet, and great for Orange County and the state of Virginia, and we want to make sure we continue that going forward, and speaking that, and as Lee did a great job speaking as well. Really did a good job, really talking up the company itself, a little better than the governor, I thought. And I think we knew more about what was going on,
They do have a pretty extensive website.
right? But your personal experience, with submarines and, missiles on board, that was, really great to hear. And, I was glad that you all, were able to participate. What we're doing now is, we have a performance agreement that was a part of this announcement. The state, presented a check of $300,000, which, at the time we started this discussion was called a Governor's Opportunity Fund. In the meantime, they've changed that, for PC terms, the Commonwealth's Opportunity Fund. And now, in order to receive the Commonwealth's Opportunity Fund, the county must match, that, and, through closed meetings and past discussion, with the EDA and board, we had presented, both a grant, in excess of $60,000 to be paid over 3 years, 3 installments over 3 years, and 3 years of tax revenue on both their machine and tool and their real estate, and then the waiver of some building and permit fees. That was our end of the agreement, to match the Commonwealth Opportunity Fund, and from there it goes into, I guess we open up to any discussion, but we'll need the county board of supervisors, EDA, a board member or from Aerojet, and then VDP to finalize the agreement. So this is getting that process started here today.
The building permit fees, is that going to be credited in-house?
I think that's Brian, chime in if you can here on the building permit fees. I think the planning department, will be a grant reimbursement on the planning side. And the permit fees, the building permit fees,
Director of Finance sets up a charge because, as you know, the building office is a cost recovery, that the fees paid for the department's operations.
Right.
What we do is we set up a charge account so that they charge these, so that the building department's kept whole on the balance sheet, and then these funds will track from a grant that ultimately originates with the Board of
Okay.
Supervisors.
I just wanted to make sure that we were
And you-
online with that.
But the building department doesn't have to eat it.
Right, because they are, as Brian said, a cost recovery operation, so.
Do the funds not flow through either the Economic Development Department or the EDA? Seem to me that's what we did in the past.
It will.
Well,
Yeah.
I know the grants due to the company, whether the fees are worked through the board as a part of the operating budget. I think they work on the board side, but Glenda's not here. but
The fees are done on our side. The tax grants, they actually, Airjet pays the tax, and then the county makes a donation to the EDA, and the EDA makes a grant back to recover
Yeah,
the tax.
you have to do it that way on the taxes.
Yes.
That's
Right, and some certain, you use the tax liability as the formula to determine the amount of the grant. But the fees are kind of our side. It really is a process here. The company at the end of the day doesn't.
It's fine. It's charged.
What's the status of the agreement? Is there agreement
It's
drafted yet?
been vetted and agreed. Everybody, the Attorney General signed off on it, we've signed off on it, everybody has signed off on it, so all it is now is collecting signatures. We couldn't start, to announce it and formally finalize it until after the announcement yesterday. So now it's just, the motions today will be to authorize our chairman to sign, the EDA to authorize the chairman to sign, and then collect the signatures, and everybody will get their original copy.
All right. Any other questions?
So moved.
No, let's,
But they can't, they're not.
they're not
Well,
in session yet.
Well, what you can do is
We
you can
can act-
technically do ours, or they can,
Right.
they don't even have to stay here, they can meet upstairs if they want to. Or, yeah, they can do whatever they want if you wanna continue on with our agenda.
All right.
Just for the sake, the performance agreement is going to reflect a combination of incentives for Aerojet that are calculated off on the capital investment, 11 million, and the 100 jobs created.
That's their
That's
commitment.
performance.
Yeah.
This is pretty standard boilerplate language, as you all have seen before, and that the tax liability is used to determine the grant made by the EDA, funded by the board over a 3-year period. And you all, through the course of our working with this prospect, we're privy to those details.
Is there any characterization of the jobs, of the 100 jobs, or is it just?
They actually have a minimum 60-some thousand, 70,000, they have to hit at least 90% of that, so technically 63,000 or $61,000 or whatever it is.
On
63,000.
average, as an average?
On average. So of the jobs, they have to average to, technically what it says is average of 70,000, but the whole agreement has a 90% fudge factor, so as long as they hit 90% of a target, they're okay.
And is there a schedule in there with respect to both investment and jobs?
There's a schedule for jobs, there's a schedule for investment, and there's clawback provisions if they don't hit at least 90%. The Commonwealth's money is spread between investment and jobs. We didn't care about the jobs from our money because all our money's tied to investment.
Right.
So our clawback provision is 100% investment based. The state's clawback is distributed between jobs and
And
investment.
is there language in there that requires us to call back on behalf of the state or just ourselves?
No, in fact, the state isn't even a contracting party here.
So okay.
We are the and I know this from the previous one we did. Basically, the state, quote unquote, trusts us to do what's right in clawing back money and going forward.
Trust is a funny word in that context.
Yeah, well,
Requires is a better word.
here's what the agreement says. It does not put a burden on us to claw back money, but it says if we do, we have to give the state their share back, is what the agreement technically says. It doesn't say we shall claw back. It says, but if we claw back, then we are contractually obligated to give the state its share.
It also doesn't say that we won't like you very much if you don't do the right thing.
No, it doesn't.
But they won't like us very much if we don't do the right thing.
Tends to poison the well going forward.
Right.
Right.
Right. But
I'm just saying, from a legal standpoint, we haven't burdened ourselves with a duty, only a right to.
But my concern is a disclosure to Aerojet, such that they understand the liabilities and the processes and the commitments that are jointly made. I
We
mean,
had
that's
num-
really the
We had
point.
numerous emails with Aerojet on the clawback provisions and changes they wanted. They're well aware.
Yeah,
I mean, they're signing this agreement, I suspect their lawyers have looked at it.
Their lawyers, we've been on conference calls, we had numerous, in fact, they started wanting to back up on the salaries at one point. What if we are slightly short? And that's when we gave them the 90%, because we'd given them the 90% on the investment. And then they actually added 90% language on the salaries too, to give them some cushion for error.
All right.
Sounds like all parties more or less know what they're in for, and that
Yeah,
really is
I
the key.
believe
Because
so.
that, as you know from earlier conversation, that hasn't always been the case. So.
Yeah, there were numerous discussions on the duties that Aerojet was undertaking in exchange for the money.
And we'll distribute the signed copies to the board after it's been executed by all parties. So.
You want to call your meeting to order and hold a vote on this?
Sure, I think we now have a quorum here, so we'll call the EDA meeting to order. Is there a motion to approve the performance agreement with Aerojet?
So moved. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, our
Right.
motion passes.
Can I just, for clarity, is that motion to approve the performance agreement also authorizing the chairman to sign the agreement? You might, okay, you need to probably include that in the motion that your chairman's authorized to sign.
The
Okay.
chairman or the vice chair?
Chairman or vice chairman, yeah.
All right, so, all in favor of approving the motion and allowing the chairman to sign? Everybody? So moved.
That'll be a interesting set of minutes.
Rose can fix
Rose
it.
is good.
Given
Yeah.
the lessons learned on the chairman, can I get a motion?
So moved.
And that includes the chairman signing?
Yes, it does.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you.
That's it.
But we're going to recess our,
Meeting till 5.
we can go ahead and- can we go with the rest of the meeting?
You can, yeah, you can continue on. Just do the things that nobody's gonna care about anyway.
Okay, let's do that.
Well, that's the whole meeting.
All
Can
right.
we finish by 5?
Okay. Call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay. Has everybody read the consent agenda? Anybody have anything with that? Can I get-
Approve.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda approves 5-0. Okay. All right. The county attorney have a report?
No, sir.
Okay.
I can make something up if you need me to stall.
No. Okay, county administrator,
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
okay. All right, informational items. Anybody have any comments on that? Okay,
It was a longer meeting than usual.
Yes, it was.
all right. Appointments to commissions, boards, commissions, and committees.
Yes,
All right, we got something here.
actually have two.
All right,
One is for the BZA.
okay,
Mike Ross.
all right. Okay,
I don't know if you need any further information on Mike or not, but
any other, who else?
The other one is going to take me just a moment because I'm trying to remember what her last name is now. Allison, do you have that information that I gave you? Not down here.
I've got it.
Here we go. Yes, Jennifer Bryington to the Social Services Board.
Jennifer.
Yeah, Jennifer, used to be Jennifer Wilson.
Okay. Any other appointments? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Calendar. Schedule a public hearing for text amendments regarding public utilities on August 11th. Can I get a motion on that?
So moved.
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, may I ask, Josh isn't here yet.
Okay.
We had some discussions. With state funding, we need to add a little bit of language to our comp plan in order to be eligible for certain road funding. And technically, to amend the comp plan, we have to do public hearing, which Josh and I had the discussion whether the public hearing tonight would cover, but we didn't advertise that, and we wouldn't want to get caught in a technicality down the road. And so we need to do a comp plan amendment. So one of the things I suggested to Josh today is to kind of speed the process up, is that perhaps we double advertise, go ahead and in the same ad to save money, advertise the planning commission and the board. And so Josh was gonna seek, and so I'm just doing it now, authorization from you guys to do that we go ahead and initiate it at planning and double advertise it and bring it on our next meeting that meets the advertising schedule to add the language to the comp plan. And it's basically just state requirement that we designate certain areas to be eligible for state funding. And so just wanted to check with you guys if you were okay with us double advertising so that we're not taking 2 months to get this done.
Right, and I believe that information was a result of the VDOT meeting that Supervisor White and myself went to in Culpeper.
Right, and you may want to share a little bit, I don't know if you want to share.
This is all, it's HB2
Right.
related
Right.
changes.
But the only way that you can qualify for any of the funding from that 50% of the state funding is to actually have the language in the comp plan that it is a, I'm not gonna get the word right, but it is a designated growth area, basically.
Right, their terms are different from how we term the Germanna Wilderness Area Plan as a growth area. They call it urban development area, and
Yes.
actually, it's a UDA
UDA.
like, L-I-K-E, not L-I-T-E. But it just would enable us to.
So we would schedule that hearing for the same date?
No, what I'm asking is that you're scheduling this, I don't know if you can make the advertising deadlines, but you're authorizing Josh to go ahead and schedule and advertise the public hearings so that he can run it all in one ad. I don't know what date that would be, but that he's authorized to do it all in one ad and schedule it in a manner that it can be advertised in one newspaper ad. Because we can, rather than you have to run the ad for the planning commission hearing and then pay again for an ad for the board hearing, you're legally authorized to just put it all in one advertisement. And so what I'm asking for is Josh be authorized to pick the date that works so that he can just run one ad and we don't have to pay for 2 sets of newspaper ads.
Tom, are you saying that on this HB2 issue, the planning commission has to have their own public hearing and
It's a standard comp plan amendment.
and treat it as okay.
And what I'm suggesting is it's a standard comp plan amendment, but rather than pay for 2 sets of advertising, let's just pay for 1 set of advertising and just authorize Josh to go ahead and do the double.
Okay, but then we're not authorizing the public hearing for the Board of Supervisors. We're just telling them, the planning commission, that they can advertise their hearing in the same ad that we've got for the text amendments.
Well, Allison, do you know what can we make that meeting if we advertise them?
For the August 11th meeting, which is the public utility one we already have on here, we would be advertising next Thursday, the 23rd, and then the following Thursday on the 30th. And the planning commission's next meeting is Thursday, the 6th.
So they wouldn't quite make
So
the,
they would, well, it's a 5-day window, I think, from the second ad, so I think they would make it.
August. What's, today's the
They
14th?
could
Yeah.
advertise the next 2 Thursdays and have the public hearing on the 6th.
How much money do we save by doing that?
I think those ads are what, $400 or $500? I mean, the newspaper's expensive. It is.
Okay.
Depends on whether it's a daily or a weekly.
I guess the only question I have is, are we aware of any other actions that are, you know, within the next several months, let's just say, that would require modification to the comprehensive plan? Because we could bundle it with those actions as well, because I mean, while I think we do need to do this, there's not really a sense of urgency, because we don't have any road projects that are gonna get on VDOT's radar for years.
Well, in that case, if you just authorize Josh to take it back to initiate it at the planning commission and initiate scheduling it in a way that we don't have to waste an advertising, that'll be fine if y'all agree with, if you're in agreement with that. Just so that you give Josh the authority to initiate the change at the planning commission and get that ball rolling.
I mean, there are some advantages in moving forward and getting it done, but the reality is also that, you know, we're not gonna be making any application for road work for a while.
No, but I know the only thing, there was a time period that you had to have that UDA within, the comp plan for the HB two long-range funding. I mean, I agree, you were in the same meeting I was, we're not gonna have to worry about it anyway,
Yeah.
but.
Why don't we do this, gentlemen, if we're okay, let's just pass this by until Josh comes, because there's some date of November is hanging in my mind, I don't know whether, other than Thanksgiving, whether what significance it has. But the VDOT thing, as far as the comp plan, in my opinion, is more of a housekeeping thing. We don't wanna forestall or forego any opportunities with this HB two funding, particularly on the principal arterial of Route 3. But also, we wanna be mindful of saving money and things like that, so he's got a date that he told me about, so,
Okay, who made the motion to get that withdrawn?
or suspend that until.
Just defer it
We-
until.
I think we only had a motion for item 4A to schedule the public utility. Is that the one we wanted?
14A, just as long as we
14A.
reserve the ability to come back to 14 on scheduling.
So, recommendations, go ahead and authorize for the utilities.
Okay,
and we'll-
I have a motion. Who made that?
I think Mr. Crozier.
Okay, all right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of scheduling the public hearing for the text amendments regarding public utilities? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. And then we'll talk.
Sound like we might amend that before it's all over with.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm not sure we're amending it. We're just giving Josh authorization to put his ad along with this ad.
Right, we just didn't
Which is
close out this
different than-
agenda item.
Okay. All right. Nikki?
He's ready.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm here to present the FY15 biannual end-of-year report for fiscal year 15 for the 911 Center. So in the last fiscal year, the 911 Center handled a total of 50,446 total phone calls. This is actually a decrease in the number of phone calls from last year to this year. However, our 911 call volume continues to actually increase. 16,000 of these were 911 calls were received, and when you look at the breakdown, our 911 wireless calls continues to increase. This year, 73% of our 911 calls were from a wireless device, whereas in FY14, that was only at 70%. We still continue to remain under the 5-second answering the telephones 90% of the time, and our call process time remains under 90 seconds 95% of the time. And of course, technology, right? Okay. In FY15, a huge achievement for us was actually fulfilling the 10th position that we have in the 911 center. What we've been able to do actually is now correlate this to the busiest times and the peaks in the 911 center. As you can see from table 1.1, our busiest times within the 911 centers tend to be from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And our peaks are seen between 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. So now we're actually able to get a snapshot into our 911 center and say, okay, this is 911, this is how many calls we're entering, this is our abandoned rates, is staffing meeting this? Okay, now when are we the actual busiest? So we can see over the 3 years that we seem to typically stay busy between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. And if you've ever been in the 911 center in those times, you can pretty much tell from just how much the phone is ringing that this holds true. Even though total call volume is decreased, remember I said that 911 continues to increase. And this is again reflected in actually the calendar year if you take a snapshot of the calls for service. Again, I just want to reiterate that this is dispatch. This is what dispatch is handling. If I did go up and play with and look at Chief Harkness's numbers, I can absolutely assure you that his total dispatches are going up also. And I have some of those breakdown numbers later for Assistant Chief Morton and Chief Harkness, who will be discussing those with you. As you can see, it's another 1.2% increase from last year to this year, with the town of Orange and the Lake of the Woods respectively being the busiest areas. In tables 1.3 and 1.4, we actually drilled down a little bit more to actually give you some very detailed information and start actually really drilling down into this. The first is EMS districts, and that is the county is divided up into different districts, and based on those districts tells you who's going to be the first to do ambulance and who's not. District 1 and District 7 are your busiest districts. District 7 being the town of Orange, District 1 being the Lake of the Woods. And again, you can quite clearly see how busy those areas actually are over the last 5 calendar years. We also did the same thing too and broke that down for fire to give you a snapshot of who the busiest areas are. And again, you can quite clearly see the Box 2300, that's referring to the town of Orange or the Orange Volunteer Fire Station, and then Box 2900, the Lake of the Woods. Again, those are your 2 busiest areas, which we're not surprised when we see those numbers especially, but now we can actually chart this and document this for you and show it to you. Our staffing levels continue to remain about 85% on our retention rate. We did terminate 1 full-time employee in 2015, and we had to release 1 employee from our training program. So in totality, we lost 2 people in FY15, and that shows our retention rate being at 85%. In the last month, so to speak, or the last 2 months, the 911 Center has been very, very, very busy. You've heard me talk about doing the CAD upgrade project. Well, I can actually say that that has been completed. There was a few hiccups along the way. We lost the ability to page anybody or alpha page, and we lost the ability to send rip and runs or call information to each of the stations. And it was surprising how dependent that each of these stations are on technology. Basically, we were left to just a radio to notify you, and let's just say I was kept very busy trying to fix this. During that same week also, when we were upgrading the CAD, we lost 3 of our 911 trunk lines. Verizon had a disruption in service, and it was creating something called a phantom call here in the 911 center. And that basically meant that in 1 6-hour period, we had over 200 911 calls. We had to put those 3 911 lines out of service until we got that resolved, and today my last telephone line came back up online. Also, during the week of the CAD upgrade, we lost 2 radio sites that previous weekend. That's what started off that. Lake of the Woods site went down. There was a power failure. Everything worked perfectly. Absolutely, the generator kicked on, backup power worked. When the power came back on in the area, one of the devices out there did not want to go back to regular power and failed to restart itself. Clear came out, took a look at everything, reset it, retested it, redid it on a generator load, and switched it from generator to AC and back again, and it worked absolutely fine. On the same day, Clark Mountain also went down, and Clark Mountain was a series of just unfortunate events. I can tell you that all the backup things that we put in place worked absolutely like they should have. What had happened is at some point Clark Mountain lost power, and we don't know why. We don't have the ability to monitor the power at the radio sites, so we don't know when the power actually went down. The generator kicked on and did what it was supposed to do. Again, we have no ability to monitor the generator or the fuel levels in the generator. So this is the rental generator that we had put in place. That kicked on, the tower stayed up, everything did exactly and performed like we had wanted it to. That was until the generator ran out of fuel, because we have no way of knowing that the power had gone out or monitoring that radio site. Once the generator lost fuel, we went on to battery backup. The sheriff's office did lose 2 radio sites, but the primary site and fire rescue was able to still able to operate. Once we realized this was about a Saturday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, we got the generator refueled, got the electric company out there, because when we got the generator refueled, half the building wouldn't come back on. Turns out that we had actually lost a transformer on the outside of the building, and were dependent on REC to come out and fix this transformer to get all the phases of electricity back to the building. So it was just a ripple effect, and again, like I said, without the ability to monitor this, we had no idea. So we didn't even know, couldn't even tell you how long the generator had been running until it ran out of fuel. Hence why the new P25 system will give us the ability to actually remote monitor these kind of things, so we would know about this kind of thing.
Interrupt you here, Nikki.
Yes,
You were
please.
certainly in communication with me that afternoon on what was going on.
Correct, yeah.
I think we communicated to the board to make them aware of what was going on as well. One, you know we're in the needs assessment phase with the new radio system that will have this type of remote telemetry, and so I highlight this because this is another incidents where we have a functionally obsolescent system. It still will work, and the cavalry will come, but it's something that says we're managing kind of a legacy system, and we need to move into a new system. The second thing is that I've been in contact with a person at REC. What we found out is that they may not have had the information in the right place to deem this transformer as a priority 1 transformer. The same with hospitals, jails, any of those things. The power cannot go off very long. We're going to work around getting this a priority 1 transformer, so the 12-hour lag time for REC coming out to fix it won't be that this will go right to the top of the list because of its mission critical nature for public safety.
Thank you.
So,
Does that mean we need to make the same check with all of our other sites to see that if the transformer involved is
and
properly designated?
That really kind of got to the question of what is everything, and my contact at RC was asking that kind of himself. So we're going to get that worked out so that we're prioritized on their response.
So it's been less than a priority 1 for decades?
Well, it is that it may not have been in the right place. It's not that they didn't know we had a tower out there.
They just missed
You know, some of the stuff works until it doesn't, and then we have to figure it back out again. So with Nikki's help, we'll get the information to REC and make sure we're on the first of the line.
Quick question.
Yes.
When these updates are made, will that include the AC units being monitored as well?
Yeah, the system that you monitor is called a MOSCAT, or RMS, Remote Monitoring Systems, and it can drill down to if the door's even open to the shelter, who's coming and going. Yeah, it gives you real-time access.
Because I know that's just been
Yeah.
unfortunately an ongoing problem for a long time, is losing the ACs.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So it was good. I can report, though, that successfully all the backup systems that were in place functioned exactly the way they're supposed to this time.
We need some more detection systems or
Yes.
sensor systems.
Yeah.
Questions on the,
Yeah.
with the increase in the number of cell phone calls?
Yes.
Are you finding many of those are duplicates for the same incident?
Not necessarily duplicates. If you break down our calls, it's 911 wireless misdials or hang-up or pocket dials that seem to take up 1/3 of our call volume. So when we break this down,
A third?
It's about a third of our call volume. They happen more often than I would like to admit. And each of those 911 wireless calls requires the dispatcher call that person back just to make sure that they do not have an emergency. Yes, will one motor vehicle accident generate 10 911 calls? Absolutely. Typically not duplicates, it's more the wireless, the missed dials, the pocket dials.
Okay. All right.
So as you can see, the last week of June was definitely an interesting week in the 911 center. If it could have went wrong, it did basically that week. But between myself, staff, the support of IT, the support of Mr. David, we were able to actually just successfully handle everything. And I can honestly tell you that no 911 call got missed. The workarounds did work and the backups did work to it. So reflecting back on FY15, I would like to invite Angelina Bragg to come up. She is my new supervisor who we appointed to the 911 center. So you can come up and put a face with the name. So, okay. Angie took over once we lost Pamela. Angie did interview for the position and got the position, and she's risen to the challenge, to say the least. So I'd like to put a face with a name with Angelina and congratulate her on her promotion also. So
Is she on duty on Wednesdays?
Every other Wednesday, yep. In the evening. She works my night shift right now.
The last 2 Wednesdays have been killers, so okay.
You can actually blame, I was actually on duty this past Wednesday,
All
so you
right.
can blame me. Yeah. And of course we were busy the Wednesday before because everything else was falling apart, so.
Okay, all right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Angie. So as you can see, we promoted Angelina to the communications officer supervisor. We did award 3 of our communications officers with some awards this year. Each year, as you know, we do National Telecommunicator Week, and we do award. Communication Officer of the Year was presented to Jason Guckett. EMD Dispatcher of the Year was to Lincoln Catrone, and Most Improved Dispatcher was to Lauren Brackowicki. And these awards are selected by their peers. This is not something I choose. This is not something that Mr. David has any opinion in. It's selected by the peers. And actually, we asked for the input from the career and volunteer fire and EMS agencies to select these. We managed to maintain our Virginia OES EMD accreditation status. We continue to promote Smart 911, and every day we see different profiles coming in. In fact, last week I had a gentleman come in asking, hey, can you help me set my Smart 911 profile up, so we know that the word is getting out there. Probably the biggest accomplishment for us in FY15 was being awarded the APCO P33 certification in our training program. This states that we meet the industry training standards for public safety telecommunicators. August 19th of this year, we will be awarded this we'll be awarded this distinction at the APCO International meeting, which was being held here in Washington, D.C. And we are one of 7 in Virginia to hold the P33 and one of 48 counties across the nation to hold the P33 status. So a huge, huge, huge undertaking, and we're really proud of staff for accomplishing that also.
How many in the state?
One of 7. And one of 48 nationwide.
Okay.
Yeah.
The number of 911 centers nationwide is probably about 10,000.
I can't remember nationwide, but in the state it's 121. So.
What does the accreditation involve? What does it look at?
For the EMD accreditation,
Yeah.
we have to submit a report yearly where we have to actually QA or do a quality assurance on 7% of all EMD calls received. And we have to make sure that at least 80% of our staff on duty are EMD certified. We have to make sure that the classes they're going to are actually approved classes. Everybody has to be CPR and certified, and our QA scores have to show compliance to the protocols also. We were also the first PSAP in Virginia to be awarded a Text to 911 grant, so kind of paving the way. In FY15, they actually had new written guidelines on Text to 911. They had the state had published a white paper on Text to 911, and they said use the grant program, but they had not actually written guidelines under the grant program. Our theory was, well, let's go ask. The worst they can say is no, and we were actually the first agency in Virginia to be awarded a Text to 911 grant for this. In addition, we also were awarded a call counting software grant, so we're excited to start working on that this year. Obviously,
The text 911, when do we start using that?
my hopeful go live date is December 31st of this year.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And for next year, obviously we just want to make sure that not only are we maintaining the 911 center, but we're also making sure that we keep current with upgrades, that we keep current with software, and just continue down the path that we've been doing over the last couple of years. So on that is the end of my report. Are there any questions for us?
Just a comment that Nikki does attend the Chiefs Association meetings, and she has kept them abreast of everything that's going on, as well as educated them in the Smart 911, so that more citizens get signed up for it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add one more thing. As you all know, I've asked Nikki to be the project lead for our Public Safety Communications project, which she's carrying forward. We're meeting with Christian Goodman, my counterpart in Louisa, and his fire chief, and Nikki, the four of us, and going to later in a few days to sit down and compare notes where we are. As you know, we've engaged the same consultant to kind of do our analysis, and we're going to see, kind of get where we are as two communities, two boards of supervisors, two county staffs, to see when we start bringing these projects closer together. Because as you know, the cost efficiencies, the technology efficiencies, and things that are available to us by designing these multi-million-dollar systems at the same time are all there, we feel. So we'll report back to the board here in the not too distant future what the outcomes of that get together are.
All right. Great job, Nikki. Thank you very much.
Just one more question. On the 911 calls that, or the pocket dials and missed dials, when we call them back, what kind of conversation do we have? Do we let them know that they pocket dialed, or
Yeah.
that it's a?
Yeah, and we'll call them back. They get, we call them back twice if it's a wireless call. And believe it or not, most times it goes to voicemail. When we call them back, we simply, say this is the Orange County 911 Center. Your phone dialed 911. Do you have an emergency? And most times it's like, oh no, I gave the cell phone to my baby to play with. Oh, oops, I had it in my pocketbook, or I sat on it. And most times it is accidental. Occasionally, it's not the norm. It is an emergency, and for whatever reason, maybe panic and they hung up, or something happened and they had to hang up. And then the other cases, it goes to voicemail, and we do not leave a message. We just have too many 911 calls to keep leaving messages like that. So,
All right.
okay.
Just curious.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right. And we'll get back to our regular agenda. Next item is the Employee of the Quarter.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to read some information here concerning our employee of the third quarter. Our third quarter employee joined the Orange County team over 8 years ago. The employee was nominated by his supervisor for his years of exemplary efforts for the good of his department and for the betterment of the county and its citizens. Each and every day, this employee is witnessed going above and beyond to meet the definition of a superior employee. He has taken the lead with respect to many special projects and has worked tirelessly to ensure the projects are complete. This employee has also taken the initiative to lead new employee orientation, as well as serving as the lead preceptor for new fire and EMS staff. Often, this employee can be found identifying problems and providing immediate solutions with little to no effort from superiors, which is remarkable. Recently, Fire and EMS deployed a new electronic charting software program called Zoll EPCR. This implementation had many moving parts, including new tough books purchased through grant funding. Each tough book had to be specially formatted to make it work in unison with the cardiac monitors. There were new processes that needed to be invented in order to make the deployment a success. Overall, the project was intense, complicated, and involved life-saving equipment. This dedicated employee spent countless hours, many on his own time, sorting out details and processes in order to ensure a flawless implementation, ultimately saving the county money and hands-on training and troubleshooting. This employee proudly developed a training program to teach both career and volunteer personnel the new charting software, training dozens of staff, and acting as the subject matter expert. His extraordinary efforts allowed seamless deployment of the new software, allowing for no interruption in patient care or loss of revenue. He continues to display what is valued in an employee, and Orange County should remain proud to have this individual as part of our team. It is with great pleasure, Mr. Chairman, that I present to the board our Employee of the Quarter, Mr. Michael Throckmorton.
So now I know who I can go to when I have problems with Zoll.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Next, we have the service awards. And I believe Dylan Herndon,
Dylan Herndon?
5 years as animal caretaker at our animal shelter. And those that couldn't be with us today, Jennifer Williams, 10 years in our solid waste collection attendant at our solid waste convenience centers, and Thomas Curtin, 10 years as a firefighter medic. Those are our service awards, and we'll be sure to make sure those
Okay.
plaques get to them. And that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, we got another one. Resolution here.
Oh, how can I forget? I'm sorry. That's for you. Pitch it to you.
Okay. Resolution in recognition for Thomas Joyce. So dressed up.
I can wear reasonable clothes.
I was gonna say, we haven't seen you in clothes like that before.
All right. A resolution of recognition for Thomas Joyce. Whereas Thomas Joyce served as the first Assistant Chief of Operations for the County of Orange Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services, faithfully serving Orange County since April 15, 2004. And whereas Mr. Joyce has effectively discharged his duties in each and every capacity with commitment to the mission of the department and service to the citizens of Orange County. And whereas Mr. Joyce led the training and clinical development for the Department of Fire and Emergency Medical Services, and by extension, the volunteer healthcare providers of Orange County. And whereas Mr. Joyce was instrumental in producing a collection of award-winning fire and emergency medical services training and education videos, which were recognized and honored by the Virginia Association of Counties. And whereas Mr. Joyce's devotion to the highly skilled patient care is to be recognized and modeled, particularly in his authorship of aggressive, cutting-edge EMS protocols designed around evidence-based medicine, ensuring that citizens receive the most advanced, up-to-date medical treatment available. And whereas Mr. Joyce has shown tireless dedication to the fire and emergency medical services field with over 29 years of professional experience and with numerous certifications and credentials. And whereas after 11 years of dedicated service to the citizens of Orange County, Mr. Joyce left the Department of Fire and Medical Services on June 1st, 2015. And whereas Mr. Joyce will be deeply missed, not only for his institutional knowledge, but also for his compassion during crisis situations. Now, therefore it be resolved on this 9th day of June 2015 that the Orange County Board of Supervisors hereby extends its admiration and appreciation to Thomas Joyce for his outstanding accomplishments, dedication, and service to the County of Orange. And be it further resolved that the Orange County Board of Supervisors also extends its gratitude to Thomas Joyce for the standard of health care he established during his employment, as it has without a doubt enhanced the health care in Orange County and saved or impacted the lives of many in our community. Signed, Lee Frame, Chairman, Orange County Board of Supervisors. Now, I got a chance to see a lot of this. I mean, we had cutting-edge work going that even the medical, the doctors in the emergency rooms were behind the power curve on this. And with the video he presented that gave the county itself a big award, and the work he's done has really been, plus he's done an awful lot for me. He comes up there when I'm on duty and gives me a hard time, and we've had some very good, interesting professional discussions.
Definitely. Well, thank you all very much.
And again, thank you very much.
Awfully kind.
Sure.
Next is the business spotlight. Mr. Toombs, owner of Finders Keepers Estate Sales.
Good evening. It's
Evening.
nice to see some of you again. I've met many of you already, and it's nice to see members of the public. I am Bradley Toombs. I am the owner of Finders Keepers Estate Sales of Virginia. We are the neighbor directly next door to the Gordon Building here at 108 and 110 West Main Street. We are an estate sale company. We offer estate sale services in people's homes for the need of liquidating items that they no longer need for whatever purpose. Years ago, that typically meant in the case of a death of a family member, you were liquidating your possessions of that family member. Nowadays, we do more downsizing and people moving. We have a lot of military families in the area, and those are the people in the community that we serve. We serve an area covering District of Columbia all the way to Richmond and the same distance east and west. We also found the need very quickly after starting the business about 4 years ago to have a storefront facility. We found that people still had things to sell at the end of a 2 to 3 day sale in their home. We also found that people needed to have an estate sale that maybe couldn't, for whatever purpose, be it a gated community or homeowners association that didn't allow such sales, or the house had already been sold and the things had been moved out. For whatever reason, we needed a standalone facility, and we were fortunate enough to find one here in the town of Orange, which is close by where we live, about a mile away in the county. We moved in early this spring and have been working on revitalizing the building that once was the Eagle 5 and Dime here next door. We've done a lot of painting, and we're putting down carpet, and we're getting the front painted. We've been open for business and have been quite successful due to the support of the community. We offer consigned items in the shop from estate sales, leftover items. We offer off-site estate sales in the building when necessary. And we take consignments from the community. Our little tagline is an eclectic blend of yesterday and today, because it is definitely a mixture of everything from your normal household items that are new to the very finest of antiques, to the 57 Thunderbird we have for sale in the back. It's a little bit of everything, whatever the customer has for us to sell. So I was asked to come today to let you all know who we are and what we do. I am the owner. I have a manager, John, who is on site most of the days because, as some of the supervisors know and some of the members of the community know, I'm also an 8th grade civics and economics teacher at Locust Grove Middle School at the other end of the county. So he is on site all the time while I'm teaching. We started out with 1 employee, which was his daughter. We've rapidly grown to 3, all being members of the community, and we're very happy to have them. And we're rapidly growing and changing, and it's always very exciting to see what's coming in the door. So that's what I have, and I hope that you all will take the opportunity to come by and see us. We're always glad to see members of the community. I see some familiar faces that have already been by. Even if it's just come by and say hi and see what's interesting. We appreciate it.
Hi.
Any questions?
Do you take individual items, or do you
We
want
do.
a block of an estate.
We do. Of course, with an estate sale in somebody's home, we're selling everything that's there in the home, from the random kitchen utensils to garage tools to the furniture. Here in the shop, we will take an entire household and move it if need be. That's an off-site sale. But we do also offer consignment for individual items. One or two things, a block of items. If you have stuff in a storage unit that you need to liquidate, we can take a look at photographs, see what it is, give you an idea of whether or not we can sell it for you, or give you advice on what to do with it if we don't feel we can sell it for you. We do also offer a couple of other services I forgot to mention. John does lighting repair and restoration and makes custom lighting. We are also going to offer brass and silver polishing. We're going to have a shop in the basement next door to do those services as well. So if you need items appraised, we can do that as well. So we offer a variety of services. Any other questions?
No.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
And-
having
and
me.
good luck.
I have some business cards I'll leave on the table outside. If anybody would like to pick one up, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Rappahannock, Rapidan Community Services, fiscal year 2016 program presentation. Brian Duncan.
Mr. Frank.
You should be able to key up and down and flip through it.
Very good. Thank you. Now I've got to get my notes lined up with this, but Mr. Freeman and gentlemen, it's good to see you all. Spend a few minutes here going through our program plan for the fiscal year that we just began, as a matter of fact. I'm joined here by your three appointees who've heard this a few times before today, but they're here in support of our plan, and also just to acknowledge your appointment of them is Sarah Altman, Marcy Brose, who is our board chair this year, and Mary Lou McFarland. All three very dedicated members of our board and very active in terms of participation in what we do. I'm going to give you the highlights of our program plan. There are a few things that I want to make sure that affect Orange County that I want to make sure that we have a chance for you to ask questions if you have them. So I'll move through this pretty quickly. Feel free to interrupt me and ask questions, which I think you probably do already. I'd like to point out initially that we are kind of similar to your last presenter. We are also an investment in your community. We are a significant local employer, and we spend a lot of money here providing support for the services that we provide to your citizens. It's a snapshot that I'd like to provide that gives you another perspective on us as an organization working on your behalf. The first few slides here talk about that investment. We provide a lot of services to your citizens in Orange County and throughout the region. It's a total of about 6,000 people region-wide receive services from our agency. But you can also look at the economic impact of what we do. Using kind of standard tools of economic impact, you can see on our slide here for economic impact that there's a great workforce. We would employ in a given year probably close to 500 people with a significant amount of spending in both personnel as well as just the day-to-day business of what it takes to do what we do. I think it's good to acknowledge this up front as part of your investment in our organization and in part of what we do for the community. The other thing I like to point out in the beginning is that we are only one of a number of providers of what we do. We work on your behalf as agents of local government, but there are also many private, both profit and nonprofit providers of similar services to ours in the community. This next slide here shows that the community needs far exceed the number of people we serve. So there are other providers of services that we do, and we want to complement that, not compete with it. And I think you'll find that that's true.
You talk about an estimated number of people. How do you get those estimates?
Which slide are we talking about?
This one you've got here, it says within the population
Okay.
estimated.
These estimates are just, this is census tract information. So according to the census, we can tell in the general population base how many individuals would have an intellectual disability, how many individuals may have a serious mental illness, how many individuals may have a substance use disorder. So these estimates take our regional population base and apply those percentages to that.
So we're just using national percentages, Local or state percentages?
These would be state percentages.
State
for what I
percentages,
use here.
okay.
Yes, sir. Any other questions before I go on? Okay. On to specifics about what we're doing. There are a number of new initiatives that we received new funding for this year, some new funding actually that you all have been involved in. We are very pleased with the Youth and Young Adults program, particularly targeted for youth and young adults experiencing a first episode of psychosis. This is for youth age 15 to the early 20s, which is typically if someone's going to have a serious issue as an adult with serious mental illness, then it generally manifests itself somewhere in the late teens to the early 20s. So we have a program specifically oriented for that. We competed for that and got funding for that.
Is that the young adult coordinated care that I saw an email on?
Yes, sir, that is
Mm.
exactly it. The crisis intervention team coordinator funding, our local governments came together, including Orange, to fund a CIT coordinator, a collaboration between law enforcement and mental health. And Orange, right along with your counterparts in the region, funded that. The interesting development on this that happened even in recent weeks is that we also applied to the state for some funding to support our CIT program. It wasn't for the coordinator, as a matter of fact. We felt we had that covered. And the state did not fund what we asked for, but they decided to fund the coordinator. So I've written your county executive, Mr. David, and said that we appreciate the support, but we won't even be asking for that funding this year because we received state funding for it. We're still pleased that we have the funding. And I've told everyone so far it's the first time I've actually received funding for something I didn't ask for, or had to write local governments and say I won't be seeking the money that you approved. But
It'll be framed.
please frame it. It might be the first time you've got such a letter, as a matter of fact.
This session is being recorded, you understand?
I do understand that. It was really hard to write that letter, but I felt it was important to do that. So I do appreciate y'all's support. I've spoken about CIT before, and we're excited about this development for our region. And you'll hear more about it, I'm hopeful, in the future. Moving on, just to give you some insight into the trends. The trend of us receiving new funds for crisis response services to children and adults is not new. Most new funding now, if not all, that comes for mental health services is related to crisis response. There are increased expectations being placed on us for doing more, providing more levels of complex care in the community as opposed to in facilities. And the focus on our funding, particularly state and federal, is on providing services to those individuals posing the greatest risk to the communities that we serve. Focus on integrated care and all other services, everything else we do that doesn't fit those first bullets, really being focused on very short-term, very targeted care. Which has some bearing on some other things that we'll talk about here in just a minute. We are realigning some of our services this fiscal year. Some of that affects what we do in Orange. We are looking at what we do. Outpatient services are those services that are provided by our psychiatrists and nurse practitioners and our counselors, therapists that see individuals. And they're seeing individuals that are presenting to us coming from two directions. Some individuals need short-term services because they're experiencing anxiety, depression, and a crisis in their life at that moment in time. They may see us for a brief period of time and then be discharged and never receive services from us again. The other group of individuals that we're seeing are individuals who have a serious and persistent mental illness that has affected their life generally for years and years. They have likely been hospitalized in the past, and they are requiring ongoing services from us. Our realignment is moving our services more in support of those individuals with long-term needs, and then better defining our services for those with short-term needs. We're doing this because we simply do not have the capacity to provide long-term services to everyone. So our realignment is such that we're doing a better job on the front door of saying, when you start with our services, you will be discharged probably by the end of 6 to 8 weeks. And we will not be able to provide ongoing services. If you need our help another year from now, fine, come back. But we will not be providing a long-term service. Now, this may sound odd, why weren't you doing this all along? But From our history, traditional mental health services were built around establishing relationships of a long-term nature with individuals regardless of the level of need. And as the system has grown and demand has increased, we are needing to redefine and realign our services more along our funding streams, which are saying provide support to those individuals who need supports over their lifetime. And so our system will be realigned in that way. In Orange County, also part of that realignment is we are consolidating our outpatient and psychiatric services into Culpeper. We don't have a date for that, but it will occur this fiscal year. So those services that we are now providing in Orange at your mental health clinic will be moved to Culpeper. The office itself will still have our staff in it. We'll have some staff locally here, some case managers, some people that still do relate to your local services, schools and social services, but we will not be scheduling outpatient appointments for our doctor and our therapist in Orange. I don't know exactly when this will take place, probably within the next 6 months. I will let you know. I will send out something. We are now looking at our caseloads in the clinic to determine what individual needs are. What we're not doing is just sending out a general letter to everybody saying on this date we're not going to do something from this day forward. This is being done on a case-by-case basis, individually with individuals, because of its nature, we want to handle it in a more sensitive way.
How do you deal with the transportation needs of those people?
Thank you for the question. I knew this would come up. We are working on the provision of a transportation alternative when in our assessment of these cases, there really is a transportation issue, and I'm convinced in some cases there really is. Some individuals make this transition with very little difficulty. They can drive to Culpeper and it won't be that much of an issue. We do serve individuals, and we're well aware of it, where transportation from here to Culpeper is going to be a problem, and it would be a barrier, and we want to be able to either be to provide the service for them. We are a transportation provider, as each of you probably know, or to complement some of the existing transportation services that already exist in our region, and letting them know that.
How many of the patients are your long-term? How many are we talking about here?
Okay, if you were to look, and when we get to the slide for Orange County, I'll point it out directly.
Okay,
But specifically, it's about a 50-50 split. About half of the individuals that we serve would be serving for individuals that I would characterize as shorter-term services, and the other half for longer-term services.
What is the criteria that differentiates between the short-term and the long-term?
The criterion is diagnostic. There really is a way diagnostically, just like you go to your physician, you get a diagnosis. Every individual that we serve has a diagnosis. And so diagnostically, we're looking for individuals that have a major mental illness, bipolar disorders, schizophrenia, major depressive episodes, etc. So there is a way to delineate individuals that we serve between individuals who need supports over a longer period of time as opposed to those who need, I guess, what we would call episodic support.
Anxiety?
Anxiety would be one of those, yes. Very real issues for the individual at that time, but ones, if treated correctly, will abate, and the person may move on and not need other supports for some period of time. Okay. And then any other questions? The priorities for our area agency on aging, we are maintaining our senior centers. You've got a very active and vibrant senior center here that operates 4 days a week. We are also initiating what we call care transition initiatives, and these are places where we are sending our staff into homes when people are transitioning from skilled nursing or from acute care in a hospital, so that the likelihood of their success in their home when they return from that care is improved. Hospitals don't want people readmitted for these issues, so there's a lot of attention being paid to these initiatives now nationwide, and we're beginning to provide that service in our area. And we do have a very responsive kind of one-call information center that is accessed all the time by seniors for assistance and help in everything from benefits for seniors to access to housing and other things that are needed. and that center is staffed in Culpeper, but people from throughout the region call there frequently.
Do you get support from the hospitals in terms of funding, or do you, does that go straight with the Medicare or Medicaid or insurance?
It is not reimbursed now by any of the major payers. We are hopeful to establish I guess I would say a contract relationship. We're negotiating with UVA Culpeper now for those services, and hopeful to do that with Faulkner Health Systems in the future. I skipped ahead to the Orange County slide. The other ones are in your package for information. So as you can see, just to draw attention to the first bullet point up there, the outpatient community centers. You can see under behavioral health, these are the services I'm talking about, that we've got a little over 400 individuals in that slot. So from the percentage, Mr. Frame, that I was referring to, about a 50-50 split in terms of that group. The changes that we are making throughout the course of this year do not affect emergency services that we're providing, and they do not affect children's services that we provide. This is all about outpatient and psychiatric services. The slide gives you a snapshot of the number of people in your locality that are seeking us out for services. And then the second part of that gives you the same perspective for senior citizens receiving services from the senior center who are calling us for assistance or getting meals delivered to their homes and other services.
You comment there on respite care. How do you do about doing that? What's the process?
This is a small program that we provide, and it is available for individuals who otherwise would not have access to privately operated respite care services. Respite care, temporary assistance and relief for caregivers, generally in the home, where we're sending in a personal care aide or a CNA to provide up to, I think the limit is 15 hours a week of support in the home while a primary caregiver can go about and do other things or just rest. And the qualifications on this end is very low income, generally very small payer sources. Medicaid will pay for respite services, but many private providers of care will not accept Medicaid. So it is a small service of what we do, but it's really important when you're the one getting the respite care and the caregiver, but that's what that is. I'll move ahead to the snapshot. We have other programs that we provide that are not reflected on the slides that I show on slide 21. And then to recap kind of the service priorities, and I do this because these service priorities in big measures direct how our services are shaped in your area, and this recaps some of the priorities that I've already mentioned to you. Give you a brief drive-by of our overall budget operations. This slide 23, gives you some perspective on the state, federal, local funding, as well as other sources. Fees are a big part of what we do. Then the state Medicaid program is a big payer of many of the services that we provide. So if you can see between the state, federal government, and fees, we've got a significant amount of our revenue pie covered. And then y'all's money from the local governments comes in, and then some other sources of revenue. We do fundraising and philanthropy as well.
Fees, is that primarily Medicaid?
It is primarily Medicaid. We will bill any insurance for someone coming into our clinic if they have we are credentialed by most private insurers. But when you're looking at this pie chart, it is primarily Medicaid. Go ahead to show the allocation of revenues by services. This shows you where it breaks out. Most people are surprised to see that most of the allocation of revenues goes to services to the intellectually disabled. We have a large investment in group homes for the intellectually disabled, and so this constitutes a large part of our organization, both in staffing as well as resources. But to note, no local money goes into that. It is all a Medicaid-funded service. Then expenses, no surprise, most of our expenses are about personnel. Then we have your typical distribution of other operating expenses, from employee benefits and health insurance to facilities that we operate. We have now approximately 25 facilities throughout the planning district, most small homes, a few larger facilities, but most are small group homes.
The personnel, that includes all the therapists?
It does, yes, sir. Our physicians, therapists, nurse practitioners, everyone would be in there, and as you can see, our full-time equivalent staffing for the FY16 is 330. It's about 400 people. So, but it works out to that many full-time equivalents. This gives you the snapshot on slide 28 of our local funding that we have right now, to let you see where everyone is. All the counties have really stayed very focused on our per capita funding request. A few counties give us some supplemental funding for other services. As you can see, Culpeper County was the only county last year that did not fund at the requested level, and I hope to get them back on track next year. This slide is one I couldn't delete because y'all already had it, but this actually is informative. This is the CIT funding distribution, and it does show everyone kind of anteed up to get enough money to hire a CIT coordinator, but this is actually the funding we will not be seeking from any of the local governments this year. We were able to get it from the state, and we will continue to try to advocate with the state to fund this position.
Brian, just
Yes,
real
sir.
quick, where you go from here on this, and this coordinator is to work with law enforcement primarily, public safety, to be able to better understand mental illness, and when they're responding to calls and they're having to transport those folks to the hospital and not to the jail,
Exactly.
and then tying up that manpower until the person's either civilly committed or things, and that project, that process is still going forward.
Oh, absolutely. That process is exactly the job of the CIT coordinator, and we'll be doing our own training locally as part of that, and we're pleased that we got some funding for that as well. But we made a lot of good headway last year on this, and to the point of getting the attention of all of these local governments to fund this, and there's some real excitement in law enforcement and among us that we're able to get this off the ground. All of our neighboring regions have a functional CIT program, so we're there with them now, and actually they're very supportive of it as well. So a few updates on local projects. The information on the Fauquier Rappahannock and the Culpeper Jail project are there just for y'all to look at. These are some locally funded projects that these localities are providing additional funding for us to do. I'll be glad to talk about those, but I won't take up your time unless I get questions. Recap of our major themes. I've talked to you about our transitions in outpatient services and our implementation of care transitions and our aging programs. Capital project updates. Our Culpeper Senior Center, we've ended year 3 of fundraising, and we hope to get it under construction this fall. This has been an interesting project, and we're pleased that it's been successful. The Bridges Consolidation Project, we've been working on for about 2.5 years, is also ready to move forward and probably will be bid this late summer, early fall. We have canceled our Boxwood Adaptive Reuse Project and sold the property. And so 3 years ago when this started, matter of fact, this locality among the others had given us a borrowing resolution to move forward on this. But when we did our kind of second tier financial analysis on the assumptions made 3 years ago, they were just not playing out now in reality. So before our board proceeded any further, and we looked at it hard, we debated this for several months back and forth, but really decided it was in our locality's best interest to cancel this project and look at other alternatives. It was a good project, but the board did not want to encumber 40 years of debt service on some assumptions that were not playing out in the way we projected them 3 years ago when this began. A big part of that was 3 years ago it was not an uncommon assumption that there would be an expansion of the state Medicaid program. It wouldn't have been unusual at all to think that. Well, to think that now would be naive. So that was a significant, it was not the only factor, but it was a significant factor that influenced us in terms of the revenue streams to the Community Services Board operations. Got this slightly misrepresented here. This plan, as you know, what that was part of our consolidation effort and it did actually mean that we would be moving physical offices to new locations. We're still doing the services consolidations, but we're not closing an office. I still need some office space. We still have some staff here in Orange that will be working here, but we will not be providing the outpatient services. So the way this is set up here is not precisely correct. And when we have a date for that, Mr. David, I'll be communicating more specifics to you on that. And if y'all want me to come back at that time, I would be glad to do that. So today, I wanted to be able to answer your questions. There's a resolution later on your agenda just that acknowledges your participation and your ability to kind of ask questions and be aware of it. But also, that concludes my planned remarks, Mr. Frame. I'll be glad to answer any questions from y'all.
Anybody have any questions? I would at some point like to look at your decision with regard to moving therapy to Culpeper. We're not gonna do it here,
Okay.
but I would like a chance to look at that in a little more detail.
You want me to reach out to you individually?
Yes.
And do it? I will do so. Be glad to. Any other questions? Okay, thank you all very much.
All right, thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, we have two speakers. The first is Bill Speeden, 12046 Blue Hill Road.
Close enough.
Drive?
Drive.
We all know where you live anyway,
So we can find you.
That first speaker was good to hear that Orange County now has his own answer to porn stars right here next door. I'm here tonight to represent the Farm Bureau again, to express the sentiments of the Orange County Farm Bureau as to you addressing a county concern. I've been instructed to thank you for your response to the Dominion issue. This is a county government at its best. An issue arose, the Farm Bureau and others asked your support in minimizing the impact of new power lines. You responded with positive solutions with the suggested requirement of a special use permit added to our ordinances for all zones for utilities and took steps for a formal intervenor status for the county with the State Corporation Committee. Both approaches will provide sensible layers of scrutiny protecting Orange County from indiscriminate encroachment and unnecessary and/or misplaced power lines. Dominion seems to have taken a fallback regroup position due to both internal and external pressures. A special thanks to Council and Mr. White for suggesting and making motions addressing the above, along with general thanks to all of you for agreeing to said actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Bob Wilbanks, 9140 Rapidan Road.
You can always tell a farmer they're usually limping.
You weren't last time, what'd you do?
Yeah, it wasn't. There was livestock involved. Upside down 8-weight.
Bigger than you are, Bob.
Nothing like an 8-weight upside down in a working chute.
You never win those.
No, sir. No, sir. It's especially the rescue situations. That's correct. But it's a once-a-year paycheck, so you got to do what you can. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, friends and neighbors, want to second what Bill said here. Want to thank every one of you for giving us the time on your agenda to hear the opinions and so forth, especially from me, from the ideas and the input I've had from the OMC Alliance, which we formed early on when Dominion announced the project. I'll be as brief as I can here today. I've been here enough times by now. Y'all all know who I am. And my farm, of course, is to be bisected by one of Dominion's proposed routes, and that's how I became involved in the matter. I farm a short distance down Rapidan Road. It's my understanding that y'all are voting to hold a public hearing to start the ball rolling to amend our ordinance and require an SUP for electric transmission substations. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Mr. David. That's right. Thank you, sir. Please accept our full support and appreciation for this action. While we'd like to believe that Dominion's pushing back their SCC filing date is a small victory for those of us questioning or opposing their project, I'd like to caution you gentlemen on becoming overly complacent. We do not know everything that's on the horizon. Could it possibly be in PJM's long-range plan at some later date to add another reactor at Lake Anna? Then need to route a 500 kV line, not a 230, but a 500 right through Orange County. Maybe two 500s through Orange County. And serve the populations to the north and to the west or wherever they want to sell the electricity. Because these are questions we don't know the answer to yet, it's all the more reason for us to be prepared. Appreciate again y'all doing everything you can to get us there. Our General Assembly's been pretty clear. It's their intent that issues with regard to zoning which affect the health, safety, and welfare of a community should remain in the hands of those communities. That said, we encourage you when you construct the language in your planned modification to our ordinance that you consider looking to other counties for guidance language on what consideration should be given when granting or determining specifics of special use permits. Look hard at James City County, for example. Also, please realize that due to the industrial nature of these facilities, it's our opinion that there should be no consideration to these type facilities in any of our residentially zoned classifications if possible. Furthermore, please investigate what standards you actually want substations and transmission lines to comply with in commercially zoned districts, if you want them there at all, especially if it's our intent in Orange County to create an attractive development pattern for our county. Allowance anywhere should support our objectives with regard to public health, safety, and welfare, as well as the desired atmosphere and aesthetics of our agriculture and historic resources, as well as our view shaping. Even the industrially zoned areas should require special use permits that address fire, safety, screening considerations. I'm sure y'all thought of that already. Finally, we got to put them somewhere. Allowance in agriculturally zoned areas as a special use may very well be appropriate, but no different than commercial and industrial, proper guidance and standards should be developed to address their industrial nature and give proper consideration to the right kind of setbacks from residential structures and residential zones. Appropriate setbacks from historic and cultural resources, scenic byways, and view sheds. Considerations for lighting, screening, noise, electric humming, what you hear when you hear them buzzing. A fire plan for the facilities when they put them in. For example, transformers are filled with hazardous fluids for which protection and cleanup plans need to clearly identify responsible parties and assurance for timely response in the event of a problem with one. Now again, Dominion delay in their filing is not a victory. I hope y'all take it as an opportunity for Orange County. Our group certainly encourages and supports you in using this time to do exactly what you're doing and shore up our zoning ordinance and comprehensive master plan as possible. Now, the questions asked by the Alliance early on regarding the need, reliability versus redundancy, electricity going somewhere else, questions about the impact on agriculture and historic resources, environment, property values, health concerns, tourism, quiet enjoyment of our lives. You heard us and we thank you for that. A reminder that the questions we also asked about other ways to solve the problems that Dominion told us about were broached right here in this room several weeks ago. We brought them up. They got answered publicly in the Orange Review last week. They were there all along. We found out about it. We're going to keep asking questions. We support your actions. We applaud your assistance and we thank y'all.
Thank you for some very good comments. Appreciate it. All right. Next on the agenda is the Animal Shelter semi-annual report. Jenny Strong.
Hello. Good afternoon. We've had a pretty good year for the first year. We remain at low numbers. We have opened up with kitten season and we are pretty packed right now. However, this past winter when we were slow, we worked on sanitizing and getting the place cleaned out to prepare for this, and the animals are moving through quickly. So even though we have a lot, they're actually moving through quickly and they're not sitting there. That's where I was actually this afternoon dropping some off out at PetSmart. They called begging for cats. So other than that, back in March, Gina Allison from the Humane Society and I went to a convention that happened to be in Fredericksburg. Humane Society paid for us to go to. We learned a lot of stuff. Gina really worked on adoptions and increasing adoptions, which we're doing really good with. And I pretty much focused on trap neuter release program for cats. We work with the Humane Society to hopefully get the cat problem. When I was animal control officer, that seemed to be a really big issue in our county, in every county. So that's something we want to work on to try to cut down on the cat population come springtime and summertime. Get some of these wild ones neutered, spayed, so we don't have such a load come summertime. Other than that, we did have our volunteer picnic back in the spring. That was successful. They really appreciate it. We couldn't do what we're doing without our volunteers. A lot of them come and help us do laundry, walk animals, take them to PetSmart and adopt them out. If it wasn't for them, we would not be in a position that we are in. Couple adoption events we've done. Harley Davidson's had 2 things that they invited us to. We went out there. Head Start had something where they invited us. We went out there. Gina and I are planning on going to the Orange County Fair, taking some dogs out there. It'll be too hot for cats, but we're going to take some dogs out to the county fair, try to get us out there and everybody to see us. And other than that, we just want to thank you for your support. We couldn't do it without you guys because there's not really a whole lot to report other than we're still doing good with adoptions. The dog adoptions are up. I gave y'all a copy of our stats, and the dog adoptions are way up. We actually had a tour come through the Sheriff's Department today with their youth academy, and the deputy couldn't believe how many, knock on wood, empty cages we had in the dog section. He's like, we thought we'd see a lot of dogs there, and there's hardly anything here for the kids to see, and it really wasn't. So we've been doing pretty good, and it's because of your support and our volunteers helping us economically with the financial and the emergency vet fund and keeping money in there to vet these animals and get them out when they're not sitting around. Any questions?
Actually, I do have one. I know that they apparently like having them out there at the landfill, but the large population of cats out there, are they ones
Yes.
that you all bring in and neuter and spay and then release? Okay.
We have released some out there. The superintendent at the landfill has been really good about any of the cats that come there. If he recognizes them, he's been bringing them up there. We've been fixing them for him, returning them.
Okay.
It keeps the mouse population down some. One of the things I learned at the conference was you can trap all the cats you want to, take them out of that area, and more are going to come in. If you spay and neuter what's there, they're going to fight and keep the others away.
That
So
was
it's actually,
what I was curious
yes.
about. Not that we're going to keep increasing the population
Exactly.
of them out there, but just maintain
Exactly.
it because
If it,
I know that they like having them out there.
yes, and he has said if it gets to be too many, I've told him by all means just bring them to us, and we'll get them out. You know, he doesn't want it to be too much because it does cause a problem, and some citizens get upset. But right now, I think he only has a couple out there. It seems like a lot when it's feeding time, I think.
Right.
Because I had someone complain to me, and I called him and said, hey, you got too many cats out there? He's like, we only have 5 or 6.
Yeah, I was out there one day and they were sitting there playing cards, watching people bring in their trash and everything, so.
Yes.
Yeah,
They're waiting for their dinner.
Yeah, absolutely.
They eat better than we do. They had broiled chicken one day for food line. It's like, okay. So, yes. Any other questions?
Very good.
Any other questions?
Just one other thing.
Uh-huh.
When was your inspection by the state veterinarian? It was several months ago. wasn't it?
Yes, it was. We had our annual inspection, which was good, like always. Beth always did really good inspection, never had any flaws. We didn't have any flaws. The only thing that showed up on the report was not a flaw, but we're working. And one of the things when I became director that I brought with me was the ability to euthanize. And that is if an animal comes in and they are dying and you don't want them to sit there and suffer, the time it takes on the weekend to go to the emergency vet and the money you spend, why prolong the suffering when we can do it right there? So at the time of inspection, she couldn't inspect that part because we were still in the process of getting a license, and that's been taken care of. So that way they're not sitting there, or we're spending money for emergency vet, which is hundreds of dollars if, they're not doing good. So, yep, she was very impressed. And again,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda is new business.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you heard Mr. Duncan's presentation earlier about the Rappahannock Rapidan Services, Community Services contract. This is contract for those services. Recommendation that you approve that. Certainly the county attorney will approve it as to form.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. All right. Any board comment? We didn't have any old business, did we?
No, sir.
Any board comment? All right. Would you read the
talk to
Josh about the calendar.
Josh with the advertising for
okay.
the,
All right, Josh.
Josh, if you come up here a second, please.
We had a wonderful conversation, sans you.
I'm glad I showed up. I didn't know I could get there.
Discussion, the county attorney was advising about the comprehensive plan amendment that VDOT had recommended for HB2, housekeeping and whether, was there a deadline that we needed to have that language in the comp plan and the GWAP in order to not miss an opportunity with HB2 funding, or is this something we can defer for a bit until that gets a little clearer?
We can defer it. They take, for applications for HB2 funding are due by sometime in November on an annual cycle. So realistically, if we want to apply for something for funding next year, we'd have a year and a half to do it.
Or more, correct?
Or, yeah, it would take 10 years if we wanted.
Just to clarify that, supposedly it's on an annual basis right now. They were very clear in saying that House Bill 2 is extremely unclear.
So VDOT hadn't been able to figure it out yet.
No, they have not, by their own admission. But
So if given maybe working back from this, is that we would, as staff, bring to you all what we think is appropriate time to do the housekeeping text amendments to the comp plan and whatever other documents, so we wouldn't miss an opportunity, and just do that to join it with another public hearing, so we're certainly economizing on funding.
And therefore the announcements as well.
Yes, sir. So we'll take that as staff directive and we'll come back to you at the appropriate time,
Okay,
which may be a number of months down the road.
okay, all right. So we're not gonna do anything with that today.
Yes, sir.
All right. That gets us to board comment.
Didn't we have a motion on the floor for that?
I think you had already taken action on the utilities.
Yeah, you did.
We did on the
SUVs.
public utilities. We already did that. And we're not gonna do anything on this, so.
This is 14AA.
All right.
But I thought we had one on that too.
Did you all?
We did. We did, okay.
I thought didn't we vote on that?
On the other one, on the
Yeah.
public text,
Yeah.
we did that, but
Sure.
we didn't have a motion on the House Bill 2 issue.
Well, we want to, what is the motion, what do we need for the motion on the House Bill too?
Nothing.
We don't,
No,
nothing.
nothing.
That's what I figured, okay.
There comes
all right. I thought we were done with it then.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
We were clarified.
I actually have a quick public comment if you're ready to move on to, or board comment, I'm sorry. I'd like to really reiterate the congratulations to Brian and Tommy and the staff on yesterday's activities. I mean, it's clear from the conversations that I had yesterday that this really was a true competition among several localities. And it's really a textbook case, if you want to think about it, about how these decisions are made these days, particularly by the larger organizations. And I think they were extremely impressed with what the response with the county as a whole. I heard any number of comments about they were looking forward to doing business. Believe it or not, they looked at our schools. They looked at things that we'd done recently, and you never know exactly which button made the difference, but it's refreshing to see us fare well in a competition like that, because it truly was a competition. As I think one person said, and I don't know whether we were up against 11 or 14 other sites, but it was a number about that size of other sites they could have selected from. And since this is virtually all new construction, they could have put it anywhere. And so, congratulations to the team that worked really hard to put that together. And I think it reflects well on the county, frankly.
It was commented not only by the people from Aerojet Rocketdyne, but also by the Secretary of Commerce made comments to the effect that the county had worked very well on that, so they need big upchecks. All right.
And I will add, thanks to Dan and the Freelance Star for their coverage. I assume other coverage is coming, so that It was a good day, it really was, a good day for Orange County.
Yeah.
Great for me. All right, whereas the Board of Supervisors of Orange County desires to discuss in closed meeting the following matters. One, consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation, where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of public body, and consultation with legal counsel employee retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring provision of legal advice by such counsel. And one matter concerning the salary or performance of a specific person. And whereas pursuant to sections 2.2, 3711A1 and A7 of the Code of Virginia, such discussions may occur in closed meeting. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Orange County does hereby authorize discussion of the aforesaid matters in closed meeting.
So moved.
Can I have a motion? Second. Motion is seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We go into closed session. Call the meeting back to order.
And we're recessing the closed session
Okay.
All right,
so that we could try and be punctual.
okay. All right, next item on the agenda is the public hearing for the amendments to the 2013 Comprehensive Plan for the Jimmerana Wilderness Area Plan. Josh?
Supervisors, you have before you tonight information on a public hearing we're holding for amendments to the 2013 Comprehensive Plan, as well as incorporating into that the Germanna Wilderness Area Plan. The materials you should have before you are a red line version of the GWAP, which was forwarded by the steering committee. It should have a February 20th date on it. You should also have a copy of the Planning Commission's resolution recommending approval, which has specific pages from the comp plan in it showing revisions, as well as an edit matrix for the GWAP. And then I also included with my memo some comments we received a little late from VDOT. So that being said, I guess I'll jump right into the questions, if there's anything that you might have.
Anybody have questions for Josh? All right. Okay. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Have anybody ready to speak?
Yes, sir, we do. Thank you. We have 6 speakers total.
Okay.
And the first speaker is Steve Satterfield, 21041 Parks Mountain Road.
Is that necessary for that to be there, Josh? The computer?
You can close it and it won't.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's fine. Good evening. As you know, I've spoken to you several times on this subject, raising what I regard as serious questions about the rationale and the efficacy of the proposal. I also sent written comments with the due date of January 2nd, 2015. I offer these comments again to be made part of the record. I do understand that the board appears to have made its mind up long ago, and public hearings are just legal requirements. With regard to the public comment period ending on January 2nd, I was told all comments would be specifically addressed. Some were. Mine weren't. My comments were described as general, and the action was taken as noted. Well, I guess it depends on what the word addressed means. I'd like to make 3 points tonight. First, the proposition does not meet the overall vision of the comprehensive plan. Certainly does not maintain the rural character of the county. It does not improve the welfare of all citizens. It may improve the welfare of a few large landowners, but most citizens are going to have higher taxes, and Route 3 is going to have more congestion. If successful, it would transform this part of the county into something like the surrounding counties. Second, this is not a market-based proposal.
It's government intervention and manipulation of the market. There's no demand for massive development in this area. There's at least 1,500 more homes could be built on already zoned residential land in the corridor. There's a lot of commercial zoning in the corridor. Clearly, it makes sense to have a framework for infrastructure and appropriate corridor standards to guide whatever development comes to the area. But there's a big difference between that and aggressive recruitment of development with subsidies and incentives. Third, add some protections to the taxpayers and the rest of the county if we're really serious that this proposal is necessary to benefit the county, and that it's limited to the far eastern end. I'd suggest don't subsidize this development with tax incentives or other benefits not generally available to anyone, anywhere. I know this is clearly counter to your game plan for creating economic opportunity zones. Commit to fully implementing proffers for new zoning. The current county proffer policy is a start, but it should better reflect the demographics of new population. Proffers should probably be higher in the Route 3 area, as the demographics of additional population will likely yield more school-aged children than development elsewhere in the county. Commit to avoiding spot zoning that has been far too common in the recent past until adequate safeguards and completed plans are in place. Assure zoning integrity and take action to limit the division of agriculture zoned area for residential use. A lot of us really like Orange County. I urge you to take good care of our fair county. Promoting rapid population growth is not the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stadfield.
Next speaker is Mansour Azimapur, 603 Lakeview Parkway.
Good evening. My name is Mansour Azimapur, 603 Lakeview Parkway, Locust Grove, Virginia, 22508. I'm very much proud of our government, and I'm entitled to say that. You guys are not sitting there, something happened to them, to you guys, or to everybody. You are forward thinking, planning, and want something happen that you plan. I make a very simple example, and please forgive me if this is very low example. All of us, we know we need to eat. Some of us plan, go to grocery store, buy organic food, buy the best ingredients, talk to good chef, look at the books, find the best recipe, make a food, and when we are hungry, we eat. Some of us, we don't do that. We wait, and we wait until we need food. What's gonna happen, we go to fast food. We don't know where they came from. We don't know what is in it, who made it, how long ago it was made. It's frozen, it's poison. We don't know, we eat it. Exactly what you guys are doing is the same. Either you can wait until someone come in and shove something to your system, or you plan it. You guys worked on it, hired best chef on development. You had a shred group that they came in and they knew what they were talking about. They told you what you have. You already searched what you have, what is your possibility, what kind of element you have to work with. You put it in the work and you came up with a plan. No plan can be 100%. Every plan has a room to improve. But if you sit and do nothing, guess what? You have nothing. If you do something as you guys have done it, 2 years of hard work, all of your group, I'm as a citizen, I'm very much proud of you. You've done a very good job, and I'm sure that this is what makes the future of Orange County what you guys want. We can stand in here and give you guys some facts in our mind that we cannot prove it, give you some numbers that we cannot prove it. It's just the talk. I can come in and say, oh guys, when I came in here, I wanted to be the last one in. If that was the case, Indians were the only one needed to be in here because they came in. If you forget about them, the first pilgrim were the first one to come in. But it doesn't happen like that. We are in capital of the world, not capital of US, capital of the world, and this expanding. You stopping somewhere, that means you are gonna die. As long as you are moving and you are improving yourself, you are gonna survive. And that's the name of the game. Nowhere in US, they can stop in one spot and say, okay, we are gonna survive. The first thing gonna happen, all of the young generation, they're gonna move out. And ended up having few older people just sitting in the front porch, and they were hoping they were doing something to keep employment, keep younger people in, and do something for future. Thank you very much, and I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you, Mr. Zumthor. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Terry Pace, 25485 Gooch Lane.
Well, I, of course, couldn't disagree with Mansour Zimmerpour more. I think that planning for the fundamental transformation of a very productive and fruitful and unique county is shameful. I don't think that government ever comes up with the best plans. We can look through history. Individuals do. And to take it's just shameful that we have elected officials in this county that don't appreciate all that Orange has to offer for future, for now and for the future. Where else in Orange, where else on the state level do we rank number 8? Where else? In what other activity, what other industry do we rank 8th? It's agriculture. And you want to fundamentally destroy that because you all are not idiots on the board. And you have seen other places, you've been other places. And you know what happens when this happens. In Prince William, it started with Manassas. And Prince William was an agricultural community. Well, it's not anymore. The argument could be made that it's closer to DC. Well, we're not. And anybody making that commute to DC is miserable, and it doesn't last for too long. So to be that short-sighted, I just don't believe intellectually any of you are. And I think that the only thing this could be about is crony capitalism, where a few benefit and the rest of us have to pay for it. And that's not good leadership, and it's certainly not good planning. And there's no reason to do this. Your arguments for the whole thing were, we got to diversify this tax base. Well, we can look at Spotsylvania, we can look at Stafford, we can look at Prince William, we can look at Albemarle. They all diversified their tax base, and every citizen's taxes went up. So it didn't help the taxpayer. Their taxes went up when you diversify the tax base. The second reason was about unemployment. We need jobs for our people. Well, all these diversified places you're talking about don't offer any more jobs. The latest statistics are that our unemployment is 4.8. Now, I'm not going to argue that we don't have an unemployment problem in this country, because we definitely do. But it's not nestled in Orange County, and this project isn't going to help Orange County citizens. So right now, Orange County has an unemployment rate of 4.8. Spotsylvania's is 4.7. Culpeper's is 4.4, and Stafford's 5.0, Prince William's 4.6. So all those counties that diversified, it's not doing that they fundamentally changed their county. Now, I don't know what their ranking was for agricultural production. I don't know what those counties' rankings were, but I know that we're number 8 in the whole state. So why would we want to destroy that? Our leadership should protect that, should promote that, and should want to get behind that activity and those entrepreneurs instead of fundamentally shutting it down by transforming it, because all of this, all of your ideas are no more than what's gone on already in Spotsylvania, in Prince William, in Stafford. Why do we want to do it here when we have so much to offer for so many? And it's something unique and productive, and we shouldn't go that. That's not good planning. That's bad, detrimental planning.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Zan Nelson.
Good evening. I'm Zan Nelson, and I sleep in Culpeper County. But for the last 13 years, I've worked almost every day in Orange County. So I hope it's okay that I speak. I share with Terry a love of agriculture and, frankly, an admiration for Orange County and all its wonderful assets. But I come at what you all are doing with a little different perspective. And maybe that's because I've been involved with first the Gateway Study and then this planning and study of the Germano Wilderness Area Plan. And I see it as better planning than I've seen in many, many other counties. I know that what you're looking at tonight is not the end product. There's a lot of details to fill in. But what I see happening is a respect and a plan to preserve open spaces, to combine that with good and smart development, and particularly for me, sort of representing the preservationist point of view, I see that happening genuinely with the steering committee and with you all, that we want to make sure in this plan that all those things are protected, they're blended together for a much better Route 3 corridor. And I have been, as many of you know, I have been to the meetings, I have been to the hearings, I've tried to take advantage of something quite remarkable that I think you have offered. And that's an extremely open and transparent process. You've allowed people to come, you've told them where the meetings were, you've published the plans, and I want to thank you for that from the preservationist point of view, from heritage tourism, from the hopes of open spaces and more recreational fields. I want to thank you for that process, and I want to tell you that as you go forward, you will continue to see me at the back of the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Next speaker.
This is actually our last speaker, Steve Hine, representing Germana Foundation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and other supervisors. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Germana Foundation in Locust Grove, and I'm also a homeowner in Lake of the Woods here in Orange County. And the foundation supports the incorporation of the Germana Wilderness Area Plan into the county's comprehensive plan. And we believe that the open planning process in this long-term development plan for this area of the county was really done in a very thoughtful way that considered the views and concerns of all the stakeholders in the area of the county. And as a historic preservation and land conservation organization, the foundation is pleased that the plan recognizes the historic and environmental assets that are in the Germana Wilderness area and respectful of preserving the character of the county while providing a smart framework for continued development and growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Any other speakers?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All right. We'll close the public hearing. Board have any comments, questions?
A couple of comments, if I might, on the process. If I have my dates right, I think it was May 9th of 2013. Many of us gathered with the members of the Planning Commission and the Economic Development Authority at the airport, and basically had a discussion. Several people in the room were there, I remember, of, you know, what do we do we have an area of the county in the extreme eastern section that for at least 15 years, I think I saw it actually in a comp plan that was 20 years old, talked about that being the economic development area of the county. And the question that was on the table, among others, was, do we continue talking about this for another period of time? Or do we drill down and see what we can learn and start talking to people in the community and other experts and develop a plan to go forward that we can try to collect points of view and information from various groups and sift through that and put it together into some reasonable approach so that we can give guidance not only for the county operations, but understand the needs of the landowners, what they might be looking to do, announce to the outside world what we would view favorably as well as unfavorably, how we expected various areas to be developed, recognize, as you've heard a little bit tonight, the existence of a national park. I mean, how many communities have a national park sitting inside them, as well as the Germanna area, and then the recreational possibilities of the river and the like. You know, it was quite a challenge, frankly, to take those assets and do something around them that integrated them into the process, but didn't destroy them, and frankly, hopefully enhance them. I think that, as you see in your package, there are a couple of letters from people that weren't here tonight, but submitted them from the Park Service, as well as the Civil War Trust, that speak to this, and I think they felt they were part of the process, that their views and needs were heard. I think the same is true for landowners, for the community organizations. We had several meetings with the representatives of the major communities in that area, took their input, and had sessions. And so while, as someone said, the plan certainly isn't perfect, no one would suggest that. It's a framework, it's a place to continue the conversation. And it was called for a long time ago in terms of what do we mean by economic development in this area. So I suggest that the steering committee, made up of members of the Planning Commission, the EDA, of course, county staff, and board members, really has done a lot of work to try to find something that was balanced, that focused development in a relatively small area of the county. It set some ground rules for design standards and all these kind of things. And so on balance, I think it is a good place to start. It's a good tool to build upon, and I want to just commend all those that were involved, and frankly thank the public and the various interest groups for their participation. As Ms. Nelson suggested, there were a lot of meetings and discussions, hours and hours and hours. And one of the great things about this is we essentially did it ourselves. You know, this was not a case where we brought in some outside quote group of experts and said, go write us a plan. That would not work in this case because we needed to build this from the ground up. We need to build this around the community's visions for what needed to go on there. And I think we've, in large measure, accomplished that. And sure, we'll make changes, and as things go on, circumstances will dictate taking slightly different approaches here and there. But as the document says, the development in this area started 50 years ago. And the course was essentially set 50 years ago when developments like Lake of the Woods and others were approved. What we took a little bit for levity reasons, we said, what are we going to do in the next 50 years? And that was essentially the beginning point of the plan. We're not trying to predict what will happen in the next year or two, but to chart a course, outline some preferences, stake out some positions that protect certain things. And I think the plan on the whole does that. So I want to thank all those involved, including the citizens and the various stakeholders that were involved. It was a big job.
Any other comments?
Yes. I've been involved with this since pretty much the beginning of this thought process. I was actually on the EDA at the time. And I had a little different vision, a little different belief than a lot of people. I come from the evil north, Fairfax, which, no question, they didn't get it right. They've had to go back and do and redo, and they're finally getting some things right. So, not just from them, but from other jurisdictions, I think we have a tremendous amount that we've learned and can continue to learn from. One of the very important things to me was that we did actually plan. Plan. Not decide, but plan for what is going to come to this county. And plan to bring good business, good education, good services, good housing. And to promote all of that and not promote tract homes, 100 fast food chains, and nothing but discount stores. So to me, from day one, this whole plan has been truly about preservation of what we do have and encourage the growth within the county to fit with what the county is. And yes, we do have a very, very large agricultural component to the county. Unfortunately, one of the largest components to that is not from traditional agriculture, but from greenhouse agriculture. And that truly does benefit few compared to most of the other services. I like Orange County. I like the way Orange County looks, and I believe that this plan will complement the rest of the county over time. Thank you.
Well, I sort of approached this thing with the failure to plan is a plan for failure. I also come from the north, but I worked on planning issues up there in which we were trying to solve problems that resulted from not just poor planning, but no planning. And I saw many of those trying to recover. I think what we're doing here, without a plan in place, anybody that comes in and wants to do X, Y, Z, it's pretty hard to say no. He's got individual property rights, and this is what he wants to do. And if we don't have some structure there that says, this is what we want to do in these different areas, it's pretty hard to say no. And by putting this plan in place, I think we say we can better manage the growth that is eventually going to occur in that Route 3 corridor, whether we plan or not. So by putting a plan in place, I think we will end up with a better product than if we did anything else. And I don't think it destroys the county. I mean, we look at the Civil War and the Germana eras as potential for tourism, potential for cultural resources in the county. We're looking at this, we're looking at just a small percentage of the overall county. So we're not trying to rezone or change the entire county. We're just trying to look at this area. Yeah, we're eventually going to look at the Route 15 corridor as well. But again, the majority of the county will be controlled by agricultural zoning. So I think this is important to start this way and have something in place. Now, does this set in stone? No. As we learn things, there'll be opportunities for change. Probably one of the things that I'm not sure that everybody understands is we're just getting started. The big work is yet to be done. Design standards, individual zoning categories, things like that. So we recognize that. But as we proceed through these other steps, we're going to try to make them as open as we have this first major step. Any further comments?
I think it's a good project. We've done all the due diligence to bring something forth that we can be proud of, that we can build upon. So,
All right.
I would
somebody
make the motion.
What's that?
I would make the motion to.
Make the motion to approve this,
Yes.
the amendments. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I had a few things. I wanted to
Okay.
say. I came into this midstream or maybe slightly past midstream, so I've kind of not had any real input to this and don't have any claim of authorship. Just kind of want to point out a couple of things. The county has actually been planning for 25 to 30 years. And that's one reason we don't look like Fairfax or Prince William or Spotsylvania or Albemarle. The decision was made many years ago to confine growth to Route 3, the town of Orange, the town of Gordonsville, with some on Route 15 between the two towns. When I came on the board in 96, there was already we had a consultant at that time, and they were they had been working on a Germanic corridor plan. So this is not something new. This isn't something that somebody just thought of last week or last year. This has been something that the county has been working on for 2.5, 3 decades now. And I don't think, I don't think this plan is perfect, and I don't think it's going to solve all our problems, but do you want to, from the standpoint of the people who don't like it, planning, even if you don't like what's being planned, at least it is being planned in an orderly way. It's being confined to small areas, as opposed to just a little bit here, a little bit there, running out along all the major arteries, like is done in other counties. I think in many ways this could be viewed as a growth limiting plan, because it's limiting it to certain areas. So when you can, I guess you can do glass half full or half empty, but when a developer looks at Orange County now, he's going to see where we want the growth to be, and he should understand, if he's got any sense, that we don't want it in other areas of the county. So I think that while this plan is not perfect, it's a step in the right direction. It allows us to set aside some areas and say we don't want growth there. Within the, I'm talking about within the boundaries of the plan itself. This is not all development. There are areas set aside here that we said there's not going to be development there. But then outside, I think there's an assumption that outside of that area and outside of other growth areas like the town of Orange and the town of Gordonsville, that those are areas that there won't necessarily be zero growth, but that's not where we are going to be pushing for it to go, and that's not where the county is going to be as willing to accommodate growth. So, I think this plan represents a lot of hard work and a lot of thought. I don't think the board had its mind really don't think, yeah, this public hearing is a requirement, but all those public hearings over and over again, they weren't a public requirement. So I think this board has gone the extra mile to get citizen input and to be sure that when this is adopted and is put in place, that it's got broad-based support. So again, it's not perfect, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Let's do a roll call.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Crozier?
Aye.
Mr. White?
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin?
Aye.
Mr. Frame?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you to all the speakers. All right, our next public hearing. Proposed amendments to the Code of Ordinances.
Me, Josh?
This is traffic laws.
Yeah. It's the utility.
No, this is
No,
the,
DUI.
Oh, the
DUI.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I left my book upstairs.
That's why we're here.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'd forgotten all about this. This was just, we had a discussion, if you remember, Mike Lacasse was here a few weeks ago, asking the board about body cameras and where was the money gonna come from, and we had a discussion that state law allows us to implement a fee for certain traffic offenses, DUIs, reckless driving, things like that, of $300. It's basically, the state classifies it as a cost recovery. And so we recommended that might be a methodology for paying for these body cameras and the costs of the cloud storage, et cetera, for all of that. And so I talked to the Commonwealth's attorney. She was on board for prosecuting those. And so what we brought forward to you is an ordinance that would implement that. And then what would happen, it would become a part of court costs, so that when a case is prosecuted, as part of the court costs, if it's a DUI, reckless driving on a suspended, driving without a license, then actually they would just add a $300 charge to the court costs. And then that would be collected as part of the court costs. Now, you don't get 100% collection. In fact, you probably get about 30 to 40% collection, because people without licenses aren't real motivated. Usually the threat of not paying court costs is they pull your license. And the people already who don't have a license are much less motivated to pay court costs. But we estimated that even if we're getting to statewide average about 30 or 40% collection, that it might be in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $35,000 a year that we generate off of this recovery fee. So that's the ordinance that you have before you.
and it only applies to reckless driving, driving on a suspended license, or DUIs.
DUI, reckless driving on suspended, driving on no license, those are the primary ones, yes. Maybe all of them.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Lashley? All right, let's open the public hearing. Do we have anybody signed?
Yes, sir, we have one speaker, Mr. Higginbotham.
Joe, I don't have a dog in this fight because I'm retiring. I've served 42 years in the courts of this county and this Commonwealth, and it's enough is enough. But I rise today because this is a bad ordinance. If someone is convicted of a DUI, a single first offense, there's a fine of $500 with $250 suspended, and that's a mandatory fine that must be paid. There's a $50 trauma fee that was part of the cost. There's $61 costs. You have to attend VASAP to get your license back. That's $350 to sign up for VASAP. They put you in counseling in VASAP, and the sky tends to be the limit on what you can expect to pay VASAP. You have the ignition interlock that has to go in your vehicle. That costs about $150. So you add all that up, there's a lot of money. Now, I don't like DUIs. People get hurt with that. It's not good. But when you make it so that someone cannot afford to get their license back, you're hurting people. I used to always talk to Grover Wilson about the poor man that works at the Webster Brick plant. And if it affects him adversely, don't do it. This is going to affect that man adversely because it puts money out of his family, out of his pocket, out of his ability to spend, out of his children's mouths, and it keeps him from getting his license. Now, I hear what they say about, well, a lot of people don't get the license back. Yes, but a lot of people do. They try to. And that's a lot of money. He put $350 on top of that cost that I've just brought out. It's a lot of money. Now, if you have a second offense DUI, there's a $1,000 fine with $500 mandatory. There's jail time involved, and it's 5 days in jail for a long ago first offense, or 10 days in jail for a closer in first offense. And then you have the costs and all the FASAP and everything, and you lose your license there for 3 years. And you can get your license back, a restricted license, after a year, or after 6 months, and it's a 5-year or more offense. But when you put this $350 on that, it's a cost. It's not $300, it's $350. They have to pay that to get their license back. That's not good. It was a third offense as a felony, and the man's going to serve 6 months mandatory to a year mandatory. That's a long time out of the family. And to try to come back from that, it's hard. It's hard. Reckless driving, the going rate right now, if it's reckless driving the speed, is $6 a mile over the speed limit. A reckless driving kicks in at 75 miles an hour in 55 zone, 20 miles or more over. By the time you get up to 80, you're talking about real money at $6 a mile. You put $350 on top of that, it's not fair to the person. What really offends me is the suspended license and OOL. You can drive and be suspended, try to get to work, and you have this $350 fine on top of the $200 fine, on top of the 90-day mandatory suspension. It's not good. No operator's license is when one of us is driving and we forget to renew it. DMV screws up, as they've been known to do on numerous occasions, or you forget to mail it in, and so you get caught and your license is expired. $350 on top of a $100 fine for that? Gentlemen, it's not right. This thing worries me. Like I say, I have no dog in this fight. I'm retired now. But it's going to be hard on the working people of this county to pay an additional $350 because the Sheriff's Department wants body cameras. They should have them. But to do it here, when the poor people are the ones that get caught on these things, is not good. I ask you to consider this as not in the best interest of the working people of this county. Now, the advertisement for this was not clear. I had to go pull down and read it. It didn't say you were going to hit the people with $350. It said you were going to line the code. The way it was advertised, I don't think made it clear what you all going to do. I don't like the way it came on. But I don't like this ordinance. It's not beneficial to the poor people of this county. If you're rich, you can afford it. But if you're the man scrambling to make a living and trying to cut trees for a living or work in a factory or work at McDonald's, work at Hardee's, you've got problems. If you're on the low end of some of these good jobs we have here, out at the industrial park, it's going to hurt you. And that's the problem. It hurts. It's punitive. And I don't mind punishing people for what they do wrong, but this is wrong because it also gives the officers incentive to write people because they know they will get money. And when you dangle that in front of officers, they start looking at things that are unusual. We really have to be careful of the cases because they have a vested interest in the outcome. They say, if we get this person and we get him for this, and we know him, then we can get this money. And that's what it's about. It's about money. Don't raise this thing on the back of the people of Orange County. We have other sources for funds. I don't know what they are. That's your deal. But this one is not good. I ask you to turn this ordinance down.
Thank you, Mr. Hagerman. Okay. Any other speakers?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
What's that?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. All right. Any comments or questions?
I guess we should consider what we're doing here. I mean, I hadn't really thought about it as a way to get body cameras for the sheriff's office, or frankly, as a revenue tool at all, more as a deterrent. But as Mr. Hickenbotham pointed out, I mean, there's a substantial set of penalties in place that I think we have to consider. You know, I don't think it's our intent to pile on. And as he said, I agree that particularly DWI and reckless driving, especially when the two are connected, that's a pretty serious public safety issue that we need to be sure we're giving the local authorities and the courts the tools they need to put in place deterrents for that kind of behavior. Whether what's in place or not is sufficient, I guess we are going to have to judge that here in a little while, but it appears that this would be a close call as to whether or not it would add anything to that deterrent effect, particularly if you set aside the revenue aspect, which I do. I'm not sure this is should be done just on a revenue basis.
I think the revenue was based on recovering the cost when we have a DUI, when we have a.
And there is actual cost. I mean,
That's right.
absolutely.
Cost,
In the fire and
cost
rescue.
in the fire and rescue, cost in the sheriff's department, cost in a whole variety of areas.
And that's what the state law calls it. It's actually, it's a recovery, cost recoveries is what, under state law it is recovering the costs of those calls.
And that cost is also partly borne by the poor people in this county because they pay taxes too.
That's right.
I might take some note on the suspended license. There are times I could see that, yeah, that could be an issue, problems that happen, but the DUI, the reckless, I'm sorry, when you're driving 85 miles an hour in a 55, you know damn good and well you're going 85 in a 55, even when you tell the cop you're not.
But the suspended license, that's not a expired license, that's a suspended. And it's usually, the suspension is usually the result of some other,
Believe it or not, the suspended.
No, there can be. I had a driver who was issued a ticket that the company should have paid, did not pay, and the next time he found out his license was suspended was when he got stopped for a DOT check. And they took his license, shredded it up, and we had to send somebody to go pick him up.
And also, not that insurance companies ever make mistakes, but if for some reason your insurance gets canceled, your license gets revoked. And the insurance companies don't always notify you that you don't have current insurance. So there's some issues here that I really hadn't thought about.
Am I correct in thinking that this is, like almost everything in a court of law, is discretionary? The judge will make a decision whether to impose this?
It's completely in the judge's discretion, and my understanding is our judges will be almost certain to grant it on the DUIs, likely to grant it on the reckless, much more reluctant to grant it on the suspended. I was told by the Commonwealth Attorney's Office that would not be an unusual expectation, that the judges are going to be pretty universal, that you're going to get it on the DUI, pretty good chance you can get it on the reckless, and much more problematic on the other two. That's what I was told.
I don't really know that it's piling on. I think that if someone drives when they're intoxicated, they know they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. If somebody goes 85 or 90 miles an hour, they're doing something they know they shouldn't be doing. And I think that our judges can be counted upon if if some obviously law-abiding citizen has a little hiccup and their license gets suspended or something of that sort, I suspect this $350 fine is not going to be lowered on them. I think that theoretically it could be. Judges, in the times that I've been in courts, judges have been pretty good about figuring out who's trying to game the system and who just kind of got tripped up by it. I don't have a problem with it. I don't like to adopt new rules willy-nilly, but this is, there is a cost to the county for this type of behavior, and it seems to me reasonable for the county to be able to recapture some of this.
Yeah, at one part of our discussion on this, as we were getting to this point, we talked about it, differentiating when there was an accident involved or not. Clearly, when there's an accident involved and the county's response, grows, because now it's not just sheriff, but fire, EMS, and maybe others even.
That used to be the rule. That used to be what the code said, that it had to be an accident.
Had to be an accident, right? And I know it's changed to not be that. So, I mean, I guess I would, to your comments, Mark, certainly with the DUI and probably reckless. I mean, those are intentional acts as far as I'm concerned. They're not really subject too much to the insurance company pulling a fast one on you or oversight on the part of processing paperwork. I'd be more inclined to focus on those. I don't know that I necessarily want to leave it entirely up to the judge with respect to the other categories, but
We don't really have a choice, do we?
No, you could limit, you could say this, we're only doing recovery on DUIs and reckless.
Oh, okay.
You could say that in the
I
ordinance.
would rather target it to those, because I see those as intentional
acts.
willful acts, and the others, there might even be an excuse.
Yeah, in fact, if you look at the ordinance, it identifies the state code provisions. We would just take the one for suspended and no license. We would just lift that out of there and say when you violate the DUI laws or the reckless driving.
I guess I don't have a problem with leaving the suspended in there, because if we've got this situation like you said, insurance didn't cover it, license was suspended for that, that's gonna be a matter of record. You're gonna be able to defend themselves. Hey, my insurance, I didn't know my insurance was canceled. I didn't know my license was suspended. And that's, and I think a judge is gonna take that kind of stuff into account. It was suspended because you were driving drunk last month. That's why it's suspended. So I would leave the suspended in there and leave it to the judge, because I can't imagine if a guy's up there that he's not gonna explain why it happened, and the judge more likely is gonna say, okay, we're not gonna hit you for that, especially if it's the kind of thing like you described. Guy was stopped for something else, and we didn't end up with a lot of expense associated with it. So I'd rather keep the suspended in there.
I would make the motion to do it for DWI and reckless. If I get a second on that.
I'll second that.
Now, what were the other ones, other than suspended, what were the other classifications?
It's reckless driving, driving under the influence, suspended, or no license at all.
Okay.
Some people drive without a license.
Okay.
So can we leave the no license in there?
We can.
No, that wasn't the motion.
No, I was just asking if that was a part of it.
You could do that.
I wouldn't have any heartburn with that.
Well, that I can understand, because if you have none,
Yeah.
it's,
Right, yeah,
you know you don't have one.
right,
That's also a willful act, so
right. I have no problem amending it to include that.
Okay. All right.
I will,
Good compromise.
I will second the amended motion.
All right. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Goodwin,
Aye.
Mr. White,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Frame,
Aye.
Mr. Crozier.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
4.5.
4.5.
All right.
You got
Okay.
3/4 of what you have to say.
Well,
That's pretty good.
Okay. All right,
Closed.
we return to closed session? Okay. We will be coming back down here for, an adjournment, so.
You wanna go back here?
Yeah, can we go back here? I think we can. Yeah.
I need to go upstairs to retrieve a couple things.
Well, we can go back upstairs.
Doesn't matter. I'll go
Now,
get
why
it
don't you
or-
go retrieve it? We'll take a break here
Yeah.
while you go get it.
So we staying down here?
Yeah, we'll go back here.
I'll be right back.
I would entertain a motion.
No, we gotta come out of closed.
Oh, we gotta come out of close, I'm sorry, you gotta read all those. All right.
Members of the board, to the best of your knowledge, were the only matters discussed in the closed meeting, public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and that only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting. Mr. White?
Aye.
Mr. Crozier?
Aye.
Mr. Frame?
Aye.
Mr. Goodwin?
Aye.